as the Israeli military works to defeat Hamas. Meanwhile, with all of this developing news, outlooks on a potential ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war are growing dim. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu marking the country's Holocaust Remembrance Day with new calls that Israel is prepared to stand alone in its efforts to wipe out Hamas from the region. Fox News' Ted Linder reporting now on the very latest.
With the latest round of ceasefire talks in the Israel-Hamas war hitting roadblocks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he won't fold to global calls to stop the fighting.
If Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone.
Netanyahu issuing those remarks while commemorating Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Day, beginning Sunday night and going through Monday.
In the Holocaust, the Jewish people were totally defenseless against those who sought our destruction.
For many Holocaust survivors living in Israel, Hamas's deadly incursion on October 7th is a painful reminder of their past persecution and why it's critical for them to continue fighting for their future.
We will keep our tradition and we will keep our faith.
This comes as Prime Minister Netanyahu maintains Israel will press on with its mission to eliminate Hamas.
Countless decent people around the world support our just cause.
Israel's defense minister says Hamas is not serious about moving forward with hostage negotiations, with officials calling the terror group's demands for the IDF to withdraw from Gaza and for an end to the war as extreme. IDF officials continue warning a looming ground invasion into the southern Gaza city of Rafah is likely to take place in the near future. Netanyahu calls Rafah the last remaining Hamas stronghold in the region. It's also where tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians are sheltering from the war. Ted Linder, Fox News.
Ted, thank you so much for that update. As we continue to follow these breaking news headlines, you can see the fighting continues out there in the Gaza region. You can see the camera there with all of the wind and all of the chaos going on. It has frozen at the moment. There we go. It is back. Now it's 6:11 on the East Coast. We'll take our second 2-minute commercial break of the hour. And when we come back, continuing with the latest headlines as it relates to the Israel-Hamas war. We'll be right back in just 2 quick minutes.
with Joe Lanou live on X.
We live in a world full of experts, where politicians use fear to generate power for themselves.
We've already had over 290 mass shootings this year. That's more mass shootings than days in the year.
Where our media feeds us with misinformation.
And according to the CDC, the #1 cause of death for children ages 1 to 19 in this country is gun-related violence.
Tropes.
Where it will literally tear out the inside of the body.
Where those who make the rules seem to know the very least. Scary terms used.
Arm known as a ghost gun because it skirts most federal gun laws.
Don't be like this guy. Listen to the Range Minded podcast and free your mind.
First visit to your country, and you have made it a truly enjoyable one. And we have talked frequently lately, but meeting you here gave the opportunity to discuss a wide range of topics in person, and that is much appreciated. And the Netherlands greatly values the long-standing bilateral relations between our countries. Minister Bouhabib and I have spoken extensively about regional stability in the Middle East, including the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. And the deal that's on the table is urgently needed. We sincerely hope that the negotiations will lead to an agreement. It would produce an immediate ceasefire, get the hostages home, alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza, and it could provide also a basis to build on for the future to get to durable peace and security. We also discussed the urgent need for de-escalation at the border between Israel and Lebanon. The Netherlands has grave concerns about rising tensions in the border region and the intensified fighting, and we regret the loss of innocent civilian lives. And this has implications for Lebanon and the wider region. It is pivotal to prevent violence from spreading further. A diplomatic solution is required, and we commend the efforts of France, for example, to work on that. But Lebanon itself has also an important role to play. In this context, I would like to underline the importance of United Nations Security Council Resolution 71 as the basis for a lasting peace. The Netherlands calls on actors on both sides of the border, including Hezbollah, to adhere to it. And we contribute to activities that support the implementation of this resolution through UNIFIL, for example, and by supporting the Lebanese armed forces. It was also important for me to visit Lebanon today because of the broader challenges you are facing. I hold deep respect for Lebanon, that even though the burden is heavy, still manage to rise to the occasion. In that light, I commend Lebanon for generously hosting the highest number of refugees per capita in the world. And I understand that this has a very high impact on Lebanon and its people. I want you to know that the Netherlands continues to support Lebanon across a broad range of fields. And we support stability through the Lebanese armed forces. We support restoration of the productive sector through private sector development. And together with the EU, we support social protection in Lebanon for the Lebanese and refugees alike. And the Netherlands allocated over 140 million euros for the next 4 years. And to conclude, I'm also here to officially open our new embassy. Like all of Beirut, we were hit hard by the explosion in 2020, and the new embassy is part of a closure of the last 3.5 years for us. However, like all of Beirut, we will keep asking for answers to the questions on responsibility and accountability. Thank you again, Minister Bouhabib, for your warm welcome, and thank you also for our long-standing bilateral relation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I have questions?
Would you like to answer the question?
I have a question, please. No.
No?
Thank you.
So a brief news conference there, live in Beirut, Lebanon, as the Lebanese caretaker minister spoke with the Dutch foreign minister as they are breaking down relations with conflict in the Middle East. And speaking of conflict in the Middle East, the conflict continues right now on your screen, giving you a live look out in Gaza as we continue to follow this breaking news. This morning, we're learning the Israeli army telling Palestinians to evacuate parts of Rafah. They're having to be moved to the Muwasi camp there in Gaza, one of the last places of refuge to get away from the Israel-Hamas war. And you can see the fighting continues. We've seen these missile strikes and plumes of smoke since before we came on the air this morning, and they do continue. As we continue to follow the very latest of the Israel-Hamas war, I want to give you a different shot out in Gaza as we continue to discuss the Middle East conflict, where the flags are waving. That is southern Israel looking into Gaza. We've learned that Israel has ordered the local offices of Qatar's Al Jazeera satellite news network to close on Sunday, escalating a long-running feud between the broadcaster and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's hardline government. This as Doha-mediated ceasefire negotiations with Hamas hang in the balance. The order, which includes confiscating broadcast equipment, preventing the broadcast of the channel's reports, and blocking its websites, is believed to be the first time Israel has ever shuttered a foreign news outlet operating in the country. Al Jazeera went off Israel's main cable and satellite providers in the hours after the order. However, its website and multiple online streaming links still operated Sunday. My colleague Josh Breslow joins us now with an update on this developing situation.
Saying today that his government has voted unanimously to shut down the local offices of broadcaster Al Jazeera, escalating Israel's long-running feud with the channel at a time when ceasefire negotiations with Hamas, mediated by Qatar, are gaining steam. According to a statement from Netanyahu's office, the decision goes into effect right away. It could include closing the channel's offices in Israel, confiscating broadcast equipment, preventing the broadcast of the channel's reports, and blocking its websites, among other measures. I do want to talk more about this and the latest developments coming in out of the Middle East. So let's bring in a friend of the show, Dr. Asaf Romarowski, the Executive Director of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you as always for having me. Pleasure.
All right, so first off, I do want to talk to you about this developing situation there involving Netanyahu and Al Jazeera. As far as this unanimous vote, can you tell me what is the significance of that vote and of this action here of really shutting it down in Israel, why it's significant?
Sure. So Al Jazeera is obviously, funded and based on the Qatari-based TV. They've been using that as a springboard to cascade the entire Hamas Islamist narrative. It's the same kind of outlet that they've been using to kind of win the hearts and minds. Apropos the reporter before talking about the campuses, many of the Hamas sympathizers and Hamas individuals themselves have been using Al Jazeera to thank American students for their support for Hamas. The fact that it promotes terrorism, it's been used as a terrorism vehicle. From the Israeli standpoint, this is basically cutting off that misinformation and disinformation that the Qataris have been using in the way they've been manipulating the news from Israel. And so that was the sole goal here. And the fact that it's purely anti-Semitic and pro-Hamas. So from the objectives of Israel, I would say that while the total objectives is the entire dismantlement of Hamas and its tentacles, the media and the disinformation campaign is clearly part of that. And so the fact that you had a unanimous vote inside of Israel, which again represents the left, the right, and the center of Israeli politics, is quite telling about the consensus vis-a-vis their understanding of how detrimental the vehicle of Al Jazeera is. And by the way, the Israelis have done similar kind of attacks on other kind of Hezbollah, Hamas media outlets. This is not new. Al Jazeera has to have a little bit more of a kind of a acceptance worldwide as a legitimate news source, and the Israelis wanted to make the point that that's not the case.
Reports are starting to circulate and talking a little bit more about a potential hostage release and ceasefire deal. Reports circulating that the U.S. has kind of told Israel that they should send a delegation over to Cairo for the talks. But it sounds as though Netanyahu has said he's not going to do that now until there's more of, I guess, an assurance that there is going to be some type of deal reached. What does it say by not sending a delegation over there?
Well, it's a catch-22 for the Israelis. You know, you've seen over the past 2 days massive amount of protests inside of Israel, where the families are outcrying and saying to the Netanyahu government that we need them home yesterday. And so there's a lot of pressure coming in domestically from the hostages. From the Netanyahu standpoint and the government at large, this has been the ongoing problem, as we've spoken about in the past. There's been no information about the condition of the hostages. The names have been have not been given. The Red Cross has not been allowed to go and give any kind of updates. Though while Hamas is at, when Israel has captured Hamas prisoners, they've been demanding reciprocity, even though Hamas has not given any of that. That's been the main concern. The Egyptians are saying, and this is, the Egyptians, of course, have a vested interest here. They want the war to end. They want to say that, we've helped Hamas move this along. They are trying to say, reports that have come out of Egyptian spokesmen, okay, October 7th has gone by. Now we are, it's been enough time, 6 months plus, and we need to kind of move on beyond that, and we can help bring back your hostages home and a cessation of violence. But the Netanyahu concern has been all along, as the majority of Israelis are concerned, that if you give Hamas a lifeline, which is what they have, and they are in existence the day after tomorrow, they have not achieved their military objectives. Any scenario for the Israelis where Hamas is still in power post this war is considered to be a failure, and they cannot live with that. And the concern has been, what's the catch? What's the quid pro quo here? How do we get our hostages back and consider some kind of alternative while disentangling Hamas from the civilian population? And Hamas knows that. Hamas knows that for them, either situation is a win-win, because they're still able to dangle the hostages using them as their lifeline. Sinwar is basically running around and been able to play the game, a diplomatic game, as far as getting back to the Israelis and not. And in the meantime, the concern is that the more time goes by, we don't know if people are dead or alive.
And kind of discussing that a little bit further, you mentioned Sinwar, so I want to talk a little bit more about him, his whereabouts. Does anyone seem to know his condition, his whereabouts, location, any of that information, or is all of that kind of up in the air? Because it seems that a lot of reports seem to indicate he could be there in Rafah.
Yes, well, that's the concern. Israeli intelligence has reported it, as well as the one of the people, part of the Israeli National Security Council, Tzachi Negbi, claimed that they had information that they had the whereabouts of Sinwar. He's surrounding himself most likely with these hostages, knowing exactly that they are his life insurance. But every time these communications go back and forth, what happens is, through kind of backdoor channels, the Egyptians are trying to get a hold of him and communicate. He, of course, is trying to find ways where he is not being tracked or tapped, because he knows that he's on the target list of Israel. And so this brokerage game is not really a legitimate kind of a brokerage game that's playing out, because you're dealing with the head of a terrorist organization. That's exactly the concern they have had all along. Now, to that end, while they're trying to isolate and locate Sinwar, they're also trying to gather intel to try to find out where the hostages are located at the same time. And that's a tricky business, given the fact that you are in a maze of tunnels that Hamas has built in the past 20 years, of an underground terror tunnel network that is further about 100 miles longer than the tube in London.
Hamas has said that essentially what they want here as part of a truce deal is an end to that war. But that is not realistic, right? Because we do know that Netanyahu has said the war is not ending until Hamas is completely gone, wiped off the map.
100%. I mean, that's been the argument that Israel has been making, not only to the Egyptians, but also, more importantly, to Washington, that this is exactly our war with Hamas. Hamas is for Israelis. Every day is October 7th. We are now about less than 2 weeks about to mark Israel's Independence Day and Israel Memorial Day, which marks victims of terror, soldiers who died in Israeli wars. You are now at a point in time where you're about to mark those 2 days during a time of war. And so for Israelis, it's alive and real, and they know that Rafah is the last strong stance. They cannot afford not to deal with Rafah, though they are. If you're looking at the situation, they're basically at the 1 yard line as far as where they are, as far as dismantling Hamas and weakening Hamas going forward. But they know they still need to tackle that because of the concern that every time they've gotten further south, there has still been reoccupying of the places where they cleansed in the north. And the question is about what's going to happen as far as continuation of disentangling the civilian population from the Hamas area. While all along, you still have Iranian proxies still funneling arms and money and whatnot coming into that. Even today, just a few hours ago, apropos some of the challenges, you've had the aid convoy that was going into Gaza was attacked by Hamas. So Hamas has a distinct, by design understanding that the more they can showcase Israel as supposedly hurting the population, hurting individuals in the Gaza Strip, that's a victory for them. That's exactly to my point earlier, how news outlets like Al Jazeera have been playing and portraying a fictitious fake news narrative in order for them to showcase what Israel and how Israel does business, when in fact, the opposite is actually true.
I do want to talk a little bit more about these college campus protests that we have seen going on. This is some of the video out of Portland State University from Friday. We know that these protests have been going on for weeks at this point. More than 2,400 Gaza war protesters arrested at last check. Now, do these massive protests against Israel give Hamas any, let's say, additional leverage, so to speak, in talks of any kind of ceasefire hostage release deal?
It does, because this is really part of their goal, and it has been. This is an orchestrated campaign. None of this has come in a vacuum. Many of the professional organizers and professional apparatchiks that you've seen here are individuals that were involved in Occupy Wall Street, the Black Lives Matter movement, post George Floyd. All of these are the same kind of agitators and activists that are out there. I think one of the latest reports that came out in the Columbia protests that about 50% of them were non-students. But it's all part of this larger ceasefire movement that is taking place while jumping on the bandwagon of the Palestinians, which again, from their perspective and their viewpoint of intersectionality, the most oppressed group of all oppressed groups is somehow the Palestinians. And anybody who feels oppressed for whatever reason at all needs to support the Palestinian cause. But the fact of the matter is, they make no distinction. It's not about the Palestinian cause. You're out there actually supporting a terrorist organization. This is Hamas on American college campuses. It is the Iranian axis of all of the groups that Israel is fighting on the ground on American college campuses. Hamas, Hezbollah, you had pro-Iranian flags. I mean, this is terrorism. It's not a matter of free speech. It needs to be cracked down. From my perspective, these groups need to be defunded and deported. These students need to be expelled. Those who are students, there has to be real consequences to make sure that we shut down this kind of unacceptable, behavior on American college campuses, which is basically hijacking American institutions to promote terrorism.
My last question here for you is about the Rafah offensive. It's been discussed a lot over the past several months. What do we expect that Rafah offensive to actually look like? We know that Israel has given an ultimatum to Hamas and said either accept this deal here, come up with a deal in the next several days, or this Rafah offensive is going to happen. What exactly would it look like, and how would it differ from the airstrikes that we've already seen in Rafah over the last several weeks?
So it really depends on the quid pro quo. There are potential, really two options here, a little bit more than that, militarily speaking. What's on the Hamas is demanding a cessation to the war itself and to the whole war. That's not going to happen. What the Israelis are proposing in exchange is a long-term truce. And so the question is how long a truce is going to take place. And from a military standpoint, vis-a-vis the military campaigns that relate to Rafah, depending on what takes place, it could be surgical attacks on significant targets. That is where the terrorists and where Hamas members are basically holding their ground, and that could be surgical attacks all along. Or if there's no acceptance of any deal, then you could see a military campaign a la what we've seen all along as far as the urban warfare. The airstrikes have been used as warning shots and a way to warn the individuals that we are coming in. We can surgically target specific targets, but we have not decided a full ground operation. And that's really where you're kind of toggling between those two options, depending on the hostage deal.
All right, Dr. Asaf Romarowski, thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to join us and help break down the latest developments here. Is there anything else you want to add before I let you go?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much, as always.
All right, thank you so much.
And I appreciate my colleague Josh Breslow there as he continues to update us on the latest with the Israel-Hamas war and the Middle East conflict, giving you a live look out in southern Gaza, the Rafah area, where fighting does continue at this hour. We're going to go ahead and go to our third 2-minute commercial break of the hour. But when we come back, switching gears, as we know the race to the White House is on, giving you a live look out in Washington, D.C. at the White House. Now it's 6:36 on the East Coast. When we come back from this quick break, an update, as we know the race is on for a Republican running mate for former President Donald Trump. More details in just 2 quick minutes.
We live in a world full of experts, where politicians use fear to generate power for themselves.
We've already had over 290 mass shootings this year. That's more mass shootings than days in the year.
Where our media feeds us with misinformation.
And according to the CDC, the #1 cause of death for children ages 1 to 19 in this country is gun-related violence.
Tropes.
Where it will literally tear out the inside of the body.
Where those who make the rules seem to know the very least. Scary terms used.
An arm known as a ghost gun because it skirts most federal gun laws.
Don't be like this guy. Listen to the Range Minded podcast and free your mind.
Trump. There appeared to be something like auditions over the weekend, with growing speculation about a possible shortlist. Fox's Doug Luzader has more on some of the likely frontrunners from Washington this morning. Take a listen.
Former President Trump away from a courtroom over the weekend and enjoying the crowd at a Formula One race in Miami. But behind the scenes at his home in Mar-a-Lago, a stage was filled with possible running mates. And what followed were some careful comments from some of the evident contenders.
Here's the good news, and I saw it this weekend. The amount of talent that we have in the Republican Party is extraordinary.
There's a lot of names that are in the mix. I'm honored to have my names as one of them in the mix right now.
By our count, there were 7 possible candidates at the Florida fundraising event. Trump himself was asked about the process last week.
Who's your favorite right now? My favorite for what? Vice President. Who's my favorite for Vice President? Well, I'll be making that determination sometime prior to the convention.
The Republican convention in Milwaukee this time around will start on July 15th. That gives the Trump team just over 2 months to vet possible candidates. One of them, who has gotten a great deal of attention recently, is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. In a book set to be released tomorrow, she writes about shooting and killing a hunting dog years ago that she described as aggressive and untrainable.
As a mom, I made a choice between protecting my children and protecting them from a dangerous animal that was killing livestock and attacking people.
And that was Doug Luzader there reporting on the very latest as we continue to follow the race to the White House and taking a close look at former President Donald Trump and his potential running mates. The time now 6:41 on the East Coast. We're going to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour. And when we come back, checking out the very latest of the Ukraine-Russia war as we head out to Brussels, Belgium. More details in just 2 quick minutes.
With Joe Lanou live on X.
We live in a world full of experts, where politicians use fear to generate power for themselves.
We've already had over 290 mass shootings this year. That's more mass shootings than days in the year.
Where our media feeds us with misinformation.
And according to the CDC, the #1 cause of death for children ages 1 to 19 in this country is gun-related violence.
Tropes.
Where it will literally tear out the inside of the body.
Where those who make the rules seem to know the very least. Scary terms used.
Known as a ghost gun because it skirts most federal gun laws.
Don't be like this guy. Listen to the Range Minded podcast and free your mind.
Between those two groups, of course. We will start off with a number of high-level speeches. These will be live streamed on EBS. And this morning, we also have 3 panel discussions with you, with policymakers and industry representatives. Without further ado, it is now my great honor and pleasure to ask the High Representative to take the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Mr. Josep Borrell.
Good morning to everybody, and a warm welcome to all of you, and in particular to our Ukrainian guests. Minister, and all of you, thank you for being here. I know how difficult it is and how dangerous it is for you to travel, especially those days where the attacks of Russia against Ukraine continues. Russia forces are putting a lot of pressure on the Ukrainian lines in the Donbass, bringing destruction, escalating its attacks against railway infrastructure, energy grids. They are targeting mainly energy system, dams, and now also gas storage. All of that critical for the Ukrainian defense. Cities like Kharkiv, and Odessa, a beautiful city that I visited a few months ago, are constantly shelled. Ballistic missiles and drones. Putin wants to bomb the inhabitants in order to make them out. And as you know, every day civilians die or get injured in Ukraine. It happens because Ukraine lacks air defense and artillery ammunition. And we have to increase our capacity to deliver the military aid that we promise. The decision to support Ukraine as much as the postponement of the implementation of this decision have consequences. Now and tomorrow, for Ukraine and for us. They should guide our strategic thinking. We should be more strategic on thinking what are the challenges that Ukraine is facing. It's a matter of responsibility for the Europeans. Our ability to deliver more and quicker missiles, artillery ammunition, and aircraft systems more massively and quickly to Ukraine is a matter of life and death for thousands of Ukrainian civilians and their military personnel. It's our security which is at stake. Yes, the military aid passed by the US Congress is much needed. That's a positive news, but we have to do our part. We have to do our part. I know that several initiatives by the European Union and member states are underway. The US military assistance will come. They have lost 6 months. But we have to do our part. This war, with the groundbreaking role of the 21st century technology, like drones destroying the most advanced tanks, is revolutionizing warfare. And we have learned a lot from the Ukrainians in this regard. I was in Ukraine last February, and I visited one of the more than 200 Ukrainian drone producers. And I saw how necessity powers innovation. Drones and electronic warfare made in Ukraine could become world leaders. They have been reacting because they have their need there. So yes, necessity powers innovation. Ukraine is a clear example of that. We gather this forum, and we should leave this forum with concrete proposals to support these Ukrainian producers and innovators. The cooperation we want to inspire today must indeed go both ways. Europe's defense ecosystems has a lot to offer, but also has a lot to learn from Ukraine. We need to step up structurally our industrial defense capacities. This is key in a long war of attrition like this one. This is why, when presenting recently the first European Defence Industrial Strategy, we propose to start immediately working on the integration of Ukrainian defence companies into the European Union defence industrial ecosystem. We have to integrate the Ukrainian defence capacity from the industrial point of view with ours. And in concrete terms, this means particularly to promote joint procurements between Europeans and Ukraine defense industries. There is a lot of capacity in Ukraine. They need funding. That's why this forum gathers us today. It should serve to identify concrete opportunities for joint initiatives between Ukrainian and European companies, boosting the Ukrainian industrial production, helping Ukraine to rearm, and funding it. We don't start from zero. A lot of cooperation is already happening. Several European companies recently entered into ventures in Ukraine, often to move repair and maintenance closer to the front, but also to produce artillery ammunition. Yes, something has been done already. We don't start from scratch, but we need to go further. We opened a new innovation office in Kyiv later this year to facilitate matchmaking between Ukrainian startups and defense companies. We associated the European Defense Agency to this hub in the field of autonomous systems for military logistics. But I repeat, financing is key in all these efforts. We just established a new Ukrainian assistance fund with an envelope of 5 billion euros within the European Peace Facility. And once the member states have agreed on using the revenues stemming from Russia's immobilized assets, these resources will be channeled towards Ukraine to address their pressing military needs and directly to the Ukrainian defense industry. This is my firm intention. This money has to be channeled to Ukraine in order to make the Ukrainians able to produce by themselves in their territory close to their needs, saving transportation costs and delays. We have to be more creative and exploring new ways to delivering military assistance to Ukraine. Denmark has shown example, starting the path of directly investing in the Ukrainian defense industry. This is the way to go. Purchasing equipment from Ukrainian companies or from European and Ukrainian joint ventures established in Ukraine is an option that we will explore together with the member states. Yes, like nearly everything else in this war, innovation and audacity is essential to prevail. If the military equipment that Ukraine needs can be rapidly produced by the Ukrainian defense industry, I say let's buy from them. Let's help them to produce at home. And let's provide the financial capacity to buy this production. This is a common endeavor. Our industrial cooperation should be a core element of our cooperation. So let's work together today. You are more than 140 firms coming from 25 different member states. Everybody here knows what is at the stake. Don't lose time and get out of here with concrete proposals, concrete matching between one side and the other, or the big alliance between the Europeans and the Ukrainians. The purpose is to make Ukraine able to resist invasion by boosting the industrial capacity, using what they already have, increasing it by funding it, and by buying their production. Technology in one side and financial capabilities on the other side have to be together in order to make the Ukrainians able to have the military capacities to resist. It's their existence, but it's also ours. So use this opportunity, dear friends. I repeat, 140 firms coming from 25 member states. Use this opportunity to link your capacity with Ukrainians' capacity, and we will provide funding for you to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. High Representative. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker will join us live from Kiev, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Minister Kuleba. I hope you can hear and see us. We very much look forward to your comments. Mr. Minister, you have the floor.
Yes. Good morning to all of you. Dear Josep, dear Commissioner, colleagues. I'm grateful to the EU for organizing this undoubtedly important event. I appreciate the Belgian presidency leadership, particularly the adoption of the first EU defense industry strategy in March this year. For almost 1.5 years, I have been urging EU defense industries and governments to ramp up production. If we are to maintain peace in the European Union, we must transition to a wartime European economy and industry, as paradoxical as this may sound. This is not our wish, and it never has been. 8 decades after the Second World War, all of us in Europe hoped that our continent would always be peaceful. Unfortunately, there is a revanchist, anti-European dictatorship to the east of Europe that wishes to destroy peace on our continent and will not stop until it is stopped. We cannot stop it with mere political statements. This is only achievable through superior firepower. Russia's current pace of militarization is the highest since Soviet times. We are in a race against time. I hate to say it, but we are already in a new arms race, whether we realize it or not, whether we like it or not. We cannot simply close our eyes to this reality and hope it goes away. What we can do is win it and deter aggressive Russia by demonstrating that Europe has the means to defend itself. Today, expanding Ukraine's and EU defense industrial capacities is a political issue, and it requires a political push that will transcend the whole system, from the government to the welder who is working on steel. Many important steps have already been taken, and I thank the governments and private entities that recognized the urgency and took action. I see progress from real steps to increase industrial output to the first EU defense industry strategy that I already mentioned. Our current task is to scale up this work and deliver results ASAP. There are three components to success in this regard. To begin, I continue to emphasize the importance of creating a common defense industrial space within the European Union and partner and candidate countries. It is critical to abandon national egoism and work together to ensure our shared security. Our soldiers on the front lines know what it looks like in practice. When you have a standard NATO 155 millimeter shell, the only standard it really features are its size and geometry. Shells and howitzers do not fit each other freely. French shells can only be fired from French howitzers, German and American from German ones, Polish and American from Polish ones, and so on. And this is only one example. A common defense industrial space would help overcome such problems. No country can help Ukraine and protect Europe on its own. Only a collective effort can. Secondly, long-term planning, contracts, and procurement. Predictability is the fuel that drives the defense industries. The EU strategy has already taken an important step in this regard, and we anticipate its speedy practical implementation on national and intergovernmental levels. Third, increased cooperation between Ukraine's and EU defense industries. Today, Ukraine is a European defense industry powerhouse. We have real combat experience, real technological ingenuity developed by our people, and rapidly expanding capabilities. Many governments and businesses are already cooperating with their Ukrainian counterparts, and the benefits are enormous. I encourage others to follow suit. The more joint projects there are, the better. By the way, investing in Ukrainian defense enterprises is a great way to provide Ukraine with more weapons. Our production capacity far exceeds our financial resources. Every euro invested in Ukraine's ability to produce more weapons generates lucrative security and financial returns for European partners. Before I conclude, I would like to thank the EU and all member states for all of their assistance to Ukraine since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion. Many brave steps have been taken to awaken Europe and transform it into a true global player. Many more such steps are required to enable Ukrainian victory over Russian aggression and a long-term, well-protected peace throughout Europe. I am confident that we will follow this path to success together. I hope, I count, I believe that this forum will serve as a platform for open dialogue, allowing Ukraine and the EU to address and navigate it. And most importantly, deliver, deliver, and deliver. And I would like to echo what Josep said in his address. We must do our part. We, Ukrainians, are doing our part. Please do yours. Thank you for your attention and wish all of you fruitful working day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for these inspiring words, and thank you for joining us today at this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to request the Minister for Strategic Industries of Ukraine, Minister Kamyshin, to address the audience. Mr. Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, High Representative, ambassadors, ministers, industry people, first of all, I would like to thank each of you, all of your states, for standing with us for already 803 days. Without you, we would never be capable to withstand for all this time. Thank you. Second, I'm pleased to meet you today at this historical event, the first EU-Ukraine Defense Industry Forum, which is also marks the third multilateral International Defense Industries Forum co-hosted by Ukraine. 2 months ago, the European Commission presented the first ever defense industrial strategy for United Europe. And strategy is not only highlighting that a closer cooperation between Ukrainian and EU defense industries will be a part of the EU security commitments to Ukraine, but also identifies that Ukrainian industry is a crucial component of the broader European industry. The recognition is extremely important. It underscores that Ukraine's future lies within European Union. By developing the Ukrainian defense technological and industrial base, we're enhancing our joint capabilities. Strengthening Ukrainian defense industry, strengthening the defense of all Europe. Ukraine is engaged in a war for its freedom and independence, facing Russia's unprovoked aggression and assault not only for Ukraine, but also for the whole free world. The rules-based order, democracy and human rights, particularly in Europe. The EU and its member states, alongside the US, the UK, Australia, Canada, Norway, and other allies, have stood with Ukraine to counter this brutal aggression. Ukraine is forever grateful for all the support the EU and its member states have delivered and continue to provide. But over the last year, we have also significantly ramped up our own capabilities. And we aim to further develop them in cooperation with our allies. The war against Russian aggression, as well as other global conflicts, reveals that no single nation can be sufficient enough in its defense industrial capability to meet all its needs. Collective security is the essential for any free nation's ability to defend its freedom and independence. Next month, the Global Peace Summit will take place in Switzerland to discuss the European peace formula. The main objective of this formula is to unite the global community to compel Russia towards peace and ensure a just end to the war in Ukraine. This initiative is crucial, not only for Ukrainians, but also for a global precedent. We used to take peace for granted as a constant. However, reality is different. We see armed conflicts erupting around the world. We must actively fight for a peaceful life. The Ukrainian peace formula seeks to unite all countries against war, creating an effective mechanism to counter any acts of military aggression in the future. A strong and united defense industry is a vital element of this mechanism. Not only Russia, but other aggressor countries must understand that their actions will not be unpunished. This is why freedom must be armed better than tyranny. We see ourselves as a member of the European family, and we begin the process of joining the EU. We view our defense industry as an integral part of the EU defense industrial base, contributing to the collective security of the EU member states. Ukraine's industry has much to offer to its European partners. We boast a robust defense base of 500 companies employing 300,000 people, which has demonstrated remarkable resilience in the face of aggression. We're here today with 39 companies coming from Ukraine, including Ukroboronprom CEO, which runs roughly 70 plus factories, including private defense industry association, including another companies coming from Ukraine. Speaking to European defense industry companies, I kindly ask you to speak more to Ukrainian companies. See what they produce, explain them how it works, and find things you can make together with them. Speaking to Ukrainian companies, don't be shy. Speak to European colleagues. Show things you make in Ukraine. Find ways how you can make these things together. Both parties will find the value, I'm sure in that. Ukrainian defense industry is rapidly growing. Last year, the production of weapon and military equipment tripled. This year, contracting have already doubled compared to last year, but with your support, we can achieve even more. The gap between the capability of our defense industry and the funds available for weapon procurement amounts to $10 billion this year only. We invite our partner countries to help close this gap through direct contracts with Ukrainian companies. This support is vital for both Ukrainian defense forces and Ukrainian economy. We call this initiative Zbroyeri, which means armorers in Ukrainian manufacturing freedom. It's a global fundraising project, and we urge our partners countries to support Ukrainian defense industry now, not only for long-term partnership programs, but also through immediate decisions such as grant and direct contracts to produce more weapons, as High Representative said. 2 weeks ago, Denmark became the first country to join this brewery initiative. Denmark will be ordering weapons from Ukrainian defense industry for Ukrainian armed forces. And we are immensely grateful to Danish people for this support. Staying strong, staying united, and supporting Ukrainian weapon producers is the key. I wish you a productive day, and let's build the arsenal of the free world together. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Minister Kamishin. I'm sure that our industry representatives have heard your plea to establish contacts and partnerships at today's forum. Can I now please ask your attention for a message for the Commissioner for Internal Market, Mr. Thierry Breton.
Cher Josep, dear ministers, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot be with you today in person, and I deeply regret it. But I wanted to address you directly, nonetheless, as this forum opens a new chapter in our EU-Ukraine defense industrial cooperation. When we started to design the new European defense industrial strategy, Josep Borrell and I agreed that bringing together European and Ukrainian defense industries had to be a core objective. Today's meeting of our respective industrial leadership is a first step as it brings EU-Ukraine defense cooperation to the next level. My personal commitment to Ukraine and also our joint ambition to mobilize the European industry to deliver what is needed are as solid as ever. I am pushing so that we move in Europe for the defense industries into a war economy mode, so that we can produce faster and more with the view to continue supporting Ukraine now and on the long term, whatever happens. I am glad to see an impressive level of representation from the European and the Ukrainian defense industry. I would like to thank the Belgian presidency and the ASD Association for your valuable support in the organization of this event today. How can we best integrate the Ukrainian defense industry into the European defense technological and industrial base? This is the question I would like to get your input on with very concrete proposals. Of course, we need to identify areas where the cooperation is urgently needed. And to do that, we need to hear directly from you on what your critical needs are. This will help map a way forward on developing stronger cooperation between our respective industries in a very focused way. We have proven that Europe can mobilize its means and resources in a very efficient way. Your clear statement of your needs was instrumental to steer our efforts to increase artillery ammunition production in Europe and to mobilize instruments like the European Peace Facility. We have also mobilized EU budget through the program ASAP to invest more than 500 million euros in 31 industrial projects within 15 member states for the production of ammunition. In less than 10 months, we already increased our artillery ammunition production capacity to 1 million shells per year. And thanks to ASAP, we will reach 2 million per year next year. But let me be blunt. We know this is not enough. We need to continue increasing our capacity of production on ammunition, but member states must also pass contracts so that these ammunitions can be sent to Ukraine. And we need and will make sure to replicate the ammunition approach to other segments with a view to increase our production capacities. This is the sense of our new European Defence Industrial Strategy, accompanied by the new European Defence Industry Programme, whose aim is to increase Europe's defence readiness. The strategy is meant not only to support European defence industrial readiness, but also to enhance ties between the European and the Ukrainian defense industries. It sets a clear priority on further developing the cooperation. First, this is why we will open a Defense Innovation Office in Kyiv to create a bridge between EU innovative startups and Ukrainian companies and its armed forces, so that European startups can help Ukrainian soldiers on the field. I am pleased that practical work to deliver on that task has already started. Second, as part of EDIP, we have proposed to continue and expand the use of EU budget to support the industrial production capacities and the joint acquisition on all the defense equipment needed. We have also designed a dedicated Ukrainian pillar within EDIP, which would concretely mean that Ukraine could participate to joint acquisition programs with European partners, that Ukrainian defense industries could be directly supported and participate to industrial projects, and that we will directly support joint cooperation between European and Ukrainian industries in Ukraine. There is no stronger signal of our intentions when it comes to the future of our industrial cooperation. I'm very confident that ultimately, the day when Ukrainian industry will become an integral part of European defense industrial and technological base is getting closer. Of course, for all this, we need more budgetary means. We are working on it, following the March UK Council through the mobilization of the proceeds from the Russian frozen assets, but also through potentially more innovative financing. Rest assured, I will not spare any efforts to mobilize our defense industry in support to Ukraine. I wish you all a very fruitful day of exchanges and also business contact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Breton. Ladies and gentlemen, as a final speaker in this impressive lineup, it is my honor to invite the Belgian Minister of Defense, Ms. Ludivine de Donder, to take the stage. Madam Minister, thank you very much for your support and the support of the Belgian presidency of the Council in this event today. You have the floor.
Monsieur le haut représentant, monsieur le ministre, mesdames et messieurs, en vos titres, grades et qualités. Tout d'abord, permettez-moi de saluer l'organisation de ce 3e forum.
If you're just now tuning into Live Now from Fox, on the left side of your screen, we are in Brussels, Belgium, as this morning opening remarks were held at the Ukraine Defense Industries Forum. Several speakers who were in English, but right now the defense minister not speaking in English. So we are going to move on from this event. On the right side of your screen, top stories we're following this morning here on Live Now from Fox. That top right box, a live look out in Gaza as Israeli Defense Forces have told Palestinians to evacuate. And then we're looking ahead to the 9 o'clock hour in that bottom box, a live look out in New York City in front of Trump Towers, as at 9:30 this morning, the Trump hush money trial will resume. Now it's 7:17 on the East Coast. We're going to go to our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour. And when we come back, more breaking news headlines, top stories, and live events of your Monday morning.
We live in a world full of experts, where politicians use fear to generate power for themselves.
We've already had over 290 mass shootings this year. That's more mass shootings than days in the year.
Where our media feeds us with misinformation.
And according to the CDC, the #1 cause of death for children ages 1 to 19 in this country is gun-related violence.
Tropes.
Where it will literally tear out the inside of the body.
Where those who make the rules seem to know the very least. scary terms used.
Arm known as a ghost gun because it skirts most federal gun laws.
Don't be like this guy. Listen to the Range Minded podcast and free your mind.
Night Court with Joe Lanou live on X.
From the area, signaling that a long-promised battleground invasion there could be imminent. The announcement complicated last-ditch efforts by international mediators, including the director of the CIA, to broker a ceasefire. The militant Hamas group and Qatar, a key mediator, have warned that an invasion of Rafah could derail the talks. The U.S. repeatedly urging Israel against invading Rafah. However, Israel has described Rafah as the last significant Hamas stronghold after 7 months of war, and its leaders have repeatedly said they need to carry out a ground invasion to defeat the Islamic militant group. An army spokesperson saying some 100,000 people were being ordered to move to a nearby Israel-declared humanitarian zone, that zone called Muwasi, and that's what you see there on your screen. He said Israel was preparing a, quote, limited scope operation and would not say whether this was the beginning of a broader invasion of the city. But after last October 7th and the unprecedented attack on southern Israel by Hamas, Israel did not formally announce this launch of a ground invasion that does continue to this day. And we do continue to discuss this conflict. I actually want to change the shot now and give you a different look there on your screen. You can see the missile strikes there in the distance. And as we continue to follow breaking news here on Live Now from Fox, we're also following other headlines this morning. As we know that outlooks on a potential ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war are growing dim. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu marking the country's Holocaust Remembrance Day with new calls that Israel is prepared to stand alone in its efforts to wipe out Hamas from the region. Fox News' Ted Linder reporting now on the very latest.
With the latest round of ceasefire talks in the Israel-Hamas war hitting roadblocks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he won't fold to global calls to stop the fighting.
If Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone.
Netanyahu issuing those remarks while commemorating Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Day, beginning Sunday night and going through Monday.
In the Holocaust, the Jewish people were totally defenseless against those who sought our destruction.
For many Holocaust survivors living in Israel, Hamas's deadly incursion on October 7th is a painful reminder of their past persecution and why it's critical for them to continue fighting for their future.
We will keep our tradition and we will keep our faith.
This comes as Prime Minister Netanyahu maintains Israel will press on with its mission to eliminate Hamas.
Countless decent people around the world support our just cause.
Israel's defense minister says Hamas is not serious about moving forward with hostage negotiations, with officials calling the terror group's demands for the IDF to withdraw from Gaza and for an end to the war as extreme. IDF officials continue warning a looming ground invasion into the southern Gaza city of Rafah is likely to take place in the near future. Netanyahu calls Rafah the last remaining Hamas stronghold in the region. It's also where tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians are sheltering from the war. Ted Linder, Fox News.
Ted, thank you so much for that update as we continue to follow breaking news headlines here on Live Now from Fox, giving you a live look out in Gaza as the Israel-Hamas war rages on. Now it's 7:23 on the East Coast. And as we continue to discuss the very latest of the Israel-Hamas war, right now I want to head out to Beirut, Lebanon, where earlier this morning, the Lebanese caretaker minister held a joint news conference with the Dutch foreign minister discussing the conflict in the Middle East. Take a listen.
Is it hard?
Okay. It's my pleasure really to host here in meetings and in this press room the Foreign Minister of Netherlands, a friendly country, and that they have also sacrificed with us, especially a lot in Lebanon, and they have supported us, especially in the blast, port blast, you know, they lost some of their staff as well. And we talked about two main issues, the refugees and southern Lebanon. And we kind of have similar approach to a solution for these issues. I will leave the floor for Her Excellency to talk to you.
Thank you, Minister Bouhabib. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And thank you, Minister Bouhabib, for the very warm welcome today. It's my first visit to your country, and you have made it a truly enjoyable one. And we have talked frequently lately, but meeting you here gave the opportunity to discuss a wide range of topics in person, and that is much appreciated. And the Netherlands greatly values the long-standing bilateral relations between our countries. Minister Bouhabib and I have spoken extensively about regional stability in the Middle East, including the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. And the deal that's on the table is urgently needed. We sincerely hope that the negotiations will lead to an agreement. It would produce an immediate ceasefire, get the hostages home, alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza, and it could provide also a basis to build on for the future to get to durable peace and security. We also discussed the urgent need for de-escalation at the border between Israel and Lebanon. The Netherlands has grave concerns about rising tensions in the border region and the intensified fighting, and we regret the loss of innocent civilian lives. And this has implications for Lebanon and the wider region. It is pivotal to prevent violence from spreading further. A diplomatic solution is required, and we commend the efforts of France, for example, to work on that. But Lebanon itself has also an important role to play. In this context, I would like to underline the importance of United Nations Security Council Resolution 71 as the basis for a lasting peace. The Netherlands calls on actors on both sides of the border, including Hezbollah, to adhere to it. And we contribute to activities that support the implementation of this resolution through UNIFIL, for example, and by supporting the Lebanese armed forces. It was also important for me to visit Lebanon today because of the broader challenges you are facing. I hold deep respect for Lebanon, that even though the burden is heavy, still manage to rise to the occasion. In that light, I commend Lebanon for generously hosting the highest number of refugees per capita in the world. And I understand that this has a very high impact on Lebanon and its people. I want you to know that the Netherlands continues to support Lebanon across a broad range of fields. And we support stability through the Lebanese armed forces. We support restoration of the productive sector through private sector development. And together with the EU, we support social protection in Lebanon for the Lebanese and refugees alike. And the Netherlands allocated over 140 million euros for the next 4 years. And to conclude, I'm also here to officially open our new embassy. Like all of Beirut, we were hit hard by the explosion in 2020, and the new embassy is part of a closure of the last 3.5 years for us. However, like all of Beirut, we will keep asking for answers to the questions on responsibility and accountability. Thank you again, Minister Bouhabib, for your warm welcome, and thank you also for our long-standing bilateral relation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I have a question?
Would you like to answer the question?
May I have a question, please? No.
No?
Thank you.
So you heard they're out in Lebanon from the Lebanese caretaker minister speaking with the Dutch foreign minister about the Middle East conflict. Right now, giving you a live look out in Gaza as the Israel-Hamas war rages on. You can see there in the distance, Gaza, as the fighting continues. Now at 7:29 on the East Coast, we're going to go to our second 2-minute commercial break of the hour. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox, and good morning to those of you all just now tuning in. I'm Jeanne Francine. As we continue with your breaking news headlines, top stories, and live events, I want to take you out live to Poland for a live event that just came into our Live Now from Fox studios. This is the yearly March of the Living that takes place in Auschwitz, with Holocaust survivors participating, including some who have been personally impacted by the October 7th Hamas attack. Let's listen in now.
Tell us about some of the activities that Emily is participating in now.
Well, everything is a therapy to get her confidence, self-confidence back in. So she's horse riding, which, if you can think about it, she's on a horse, massive beast, and she's in control of it. It gives her a lot of confidence. Dog training. She was doing singing on stage to project her voice again. Anything that we can think of to help.
How have you as a father recovered from this captivity? Because the impact on you must have been enormous. And tell us about why you're here today. What's your message?
Yeah, obviously the impact was horrendous. I thought she was dead. Then she wasn't. She was captive, even worse than death. And then we finally got her back somehow. It was a miracle that we got her back. And I'm here today to remember the fallen, the millions of Jews and other groups of people, minorities. But also it's very significant this year, particularly because we are living in the second Holocaust, the second genocide, attempted genocide. And we'll survive this as well.
The Jews will always survive.
What do you feel about the current surge of anti-Semitism that is sweeping the world right now?
I'm sorry, but I hate the word anti-Semitism. It's too nice a word for it. It could be a lovely flower or a lovely butterfly. Have you seen an anti-Semite recently? Anyway, it's terrible, and it comes from pure Jewish hate of the Jews for God knows what reason, and ignorance, basically. Read a book.
You originally, you came from a different country to live in Israel. How has your home nation, the nation of your birth, reacted to Emily's captivity?
I don't know about the people themselves, but the government of Ireland really, really were critical in getting Emily back. No matter how they portray themselves on the television or in the public, they were crucial in getting Emily back. Crucial.
Well, we're all very, very, very happy that Emily is home, and we're all working to get the rest back as well. Thomas Hand, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Daniel Luz is among 5 other Holocaust survivors who will light a torch later today at the ceremony here in Birkenau in memory of the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. Many, many members of Mr. Luz's family perished here. And then on October 7th, he awoke to the horrors of the Hamas attack on his home in Israel's kibbutz Be'eri.
אני דניאל לוז, לוצקי לשעבר, נולדתי בפריז ב-29 לשמיני 1933. שרדתי את השואה ועליתי לארץ. ב-7 לאוקטובר הארור 2023 הייתי בבארי. רוב המשפחה של אמי שחיו בצרפת הושמדו ב-11 ל-11 1942 באושוויץ. אבי בתחילת המלחמה נלקח למחנה של גברים בסן-דני ליד פריז. אני, אחותי ואמי, אחרי גלגולים רבים, הגענו למחנה אחרון ב-1944 כבר, ושם היינו עד כשאמריקאים שפלשו לנורמנדיה שחררו אותנו מהמחנה. פעם ראשונה שהרגשתי סכנת חיים זה ב-7 לאוקטובר 2023 בבארי, ב-6:30 בבוקר, שהתחלתי לשמוע צעקות בערבית על ידי ויריות. זה היה מפחיד. יש לי קריקטורה שבתחילת המלחמה שלח לי ידיד מאיטליה, ילד מהשואה לפי הביגוד, נפגש עם ילד ישראלי לפי הזה, ואחד נוגע באצבע של השני, ואחד אומר לשני, אני סומך עליך. ואני מרגיש בדיוק שאני בעצם שני הילדים. אני ממש מאמין שכל היקרים שלי שנפטרו שומרים עליי כדי שאני אוכל לספר את הסיפור. את הסיפור שגם מה שהם עברו, כל אלה שלא היה להם המזל שלי. המתנה הזאת שצירפו אותי למצעד החיים זה בעצם סגירת מעגל שמאפשרת לי להחזיר לכל היקרים שלי את הכבוד שמגיע להם. אני לא מאמין שנתנו לי תפקיד כזה לספר מה שהיה.
What incredibly moving testimony. Let's now take a look at the march in progress. Let's see, the people are just setting off. You can see that at the head of the march, at the head of the procession, you will see Holocaust survivors behind those carrying the banner, the official banner for March of the Living 2024. They're just now heading off from Auschwitz I to Auschwitz II, known as Birkenau as well. You can read the banners. This one reading in both Hebrew and in English. The Jews are here to stay. Many people have draped themselves in the Israeli flag as a very direct sign of solidarity with the Jewish state. It's important to remember that the Holocaust ended in 1945 at the end of World War II. There was no Jewish state at that time. Israel was only created in 1948, the modern state of Israel. So the Jews who perished here, the 6 million Jews who died in Europe, there was no Jewish homeland. There was nowhere for them to go. That is a situation which has now changed dramatically, even though on the 7th of October, the greatest atrocities ever that have been perpetrated against the Jewish people took place on the 7th of October, but in an entirely different environment. There is a Jewish state. There is a Jewish army. The Israel Defense Forces immediately began fighting back the same day as October 7th during the attacks and in full force within just hours afterward. The atrocities that were committed during the Holocaust gave rise to that call, never again. And even though that call was somewhat shattered, diminished on October 7th, it still is not in the same context. There is a Jewish state which is fighting to protect Israel to this day, and Israel has many allies and supporters around the world, many of whom are here today, and you will be able to see the various delegations waving their own national flags. You'll see them from countries around the world, organizations around the world, leaders of organizations, adults, teenagers, everyone marching together to remember the Holocaust and to honor the Jewish state of Israel. Earlier today, I spoke with Haim Taib. He's the grandson of a Holocaust survivor from Tunisia. He is the founder and the president of the Mitrelli Group and the Menamodin Foundation, which has been taking a more active role in a different turn since the atrocities on October 7th. Let's listen. Joining me now is Haim Taib, who is the founder and the president of the Mitrelli Group and the Menamodin Foundation, which is dedicated to preserving the memory of the Jews of Tunisia and North African countries who also suffered during the Holocaust, although this history is often overlooked. Let's start today, however, with the fact that your foundation organized the delegation of survivors of the October 7th massacre. Tell me about that, please.
What happened in Israel in October 7, it's horror. And immediately after, I decided that as a grandson of a Holocaust survivor from Tunisia, I must do something. So we start help the cities and the kibbutzim in Gaza envelope to recover and to rebuild. And we take them to here, to Auschwitz-Birkenau, to march together with me, because I think have a connection between what happened in the Holocaust and what happened in Israel in October 7 attack. It's more or less the same, because the idea to kill the Jewish people in the Holocaust and to kill the Jewish people in the October 7, it's the same. So this is the motivation to bring them here.
And the foundation also has participated in many other activities that you've just now undertaken in light of the subsequent war between Israel and Gaza. Can you tell us about those activities?
Yes, we help all the cities and the kibbutzim in the Gaza envelope to recover, as I said before, and we in Menomadin writing a strategic roadmap for communities and countries. I'm doing it in Africa, I'm doing it in Israel, and I think it's very important.
Absolutely. Now, last year you lighted one of the torches of remembrance specifically for the Jews of Tunisia, North African countries, along with your wife, Iris, who's also a third-generation Holocaust survivor. Tell us what that was like for you.
It was very emotional. I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivor from Tunisia. My wife, Iris, she's a Holocaust granddaughter of Holocaust survivor from Auschwitz. And it was very emotional for us and for all the family that came together with us.
Did your grandfather share many of his experiences with you, what he went through during World War II?
Yes, not so much, but he talked a lot about the first camp that he was there during 5 months and how he ran away from there and how he come home. And my grandmother was very scared to open the door or no, because she didn't believe that he is him. She opened the door and she was very happy, of course, but this is more or less the story that he told us in that time.
It's really very moving. Thank you very, very much for joining us today, Chaim Taib. Thank you. As you can see, the march is...
As that interview wrapped up with the grandson of a Holocaust survivor, we're going to go ahead and take our third 2-minute commercial break of the hour. Now it's 7:45 on the East Coast. You can see all of the stories we're following this morning there on your screen.
Night Court with Joe Lanou live on X.
Local politics and in state politics to circumvent parental rights, that where the school has a right to Um, keep things from parents, and particularly when it comes to transitioning children, and even medical care. This struck a chord with me. I saw a TikTok post from a lady in Kentucky. She did sign consent. The school was bringing around a mobile dentist to do teeth cleaning. She signed consent for her children to have her teeth cleaned. And subsequently, after this teeth cleaning, she got a laundry list of things that needed to be done to her both her children's teeth, and that she was pretty much on the hook for. That she needed to consent and do that, or they were going to involved child protective services as if the parent wasn't providing for their child. She even goes on to say in the little video that her children do have a dentist. They go to the dentist and they've gone and had checkups, and none of these suggested procedures were suggested for her children by her own dentist. But it seemed to be concerning to me that the school interjected themselves so deep into something like a child's dental care. But we've also seen it in, I think, Minnesota. Minnesota, if a child reaches the state lines there, we've got a Minnesota state assemblyman that comes into the spaces very often, Shane, who explains that if a child gets to the state of Minnesota, they can have gender affirming care without the parent's notice. And the parent, if the parent is in another state, that they would fight extradition of that child would be returned back to the parents. I have, obviously, as a parent, have some problems with that. But I'm by far not an expert on the subject. I have my opinions, and I think a lot of us in there do have our opinions. But we do have a guest speaker tonight, advocate for education. As she says, this is her jam. He does research on this these type of things that we're talking about, government or school district interference into parental rights, and some of the places where I think that the government is overstepping their bounds or getting outside their wheelhouse, so to speak. So I want to introduce Advocate for Education, and I'm just going to call you Advocate for short. But Advocate, you want to introduce yourself and kind of give us a little background on where your expertise comes from?
Sure, you can call me Alex too. It doesn't matter. Advocate Alex. I'm also that American X Live handle that's down there too. But so long short of it, Alex, single mom up here in Massachusetts, and I got back into this fight because of COVID masking and them wanting to extend the mask mandate in Massachusetts in the schools after the governor and the Department of Education already, lifted the mandate. They put it back onto the school districts. Well, I live in an extremely woke town, and we heard rumblings about them wanting to extend it, which is a violation of your parental rights. It was the entire time. The mask mandate was a violation of all our rights, needed to say. So I went to the school board meeting, and there were probably 200 people, the most we've ever seen. They called me up to testify first, and give my statement, and I just lay into them. I'm like, here are the 10 things we're going to do. And I went over them, and one of them was like pulling their surety bonds because you're putting my kids in danger. You're compromising, the parent and child relationship, which is the 14th Amendment. And from there, it's just kind of snowballed. I have a background in both politics and education. So this is kind of, like Joe said, I did say to him, I was like, this is my jam, yo. Like, I could talk about this stuff all day long. And then I just started doing parent and community forums locally. And it turned into, within like a short year, maybe two, being here with all of you tonight. So that's kind of the long short of me. I do a little bit of everything when it comes to the schools and our children and how it ties into every other aspect of our lives. And it was funny, the bill you just mentioned, we called them the trans trafficking bills. There was one in Maine recently that myself, Jen McWilliams, encouraged the habit found out, I don't know, maybe 48 hours before the committee meeting. We were able to get so many people from across the country to send in public comment that they pushed the meeting back a week, which gave us an extra week to hit the ground running. We were able to get the bill for the third time killed in committee, and it's gone now. They'll probably try to pass it again somehow. But just because you had mentioned it, that's why I was bringing that one up. We're seeing countless states. I call them asylum states for trans kids, which they take custody of your kid. You can't get them back. Custody agreements mean nothing. It's truly disgusting.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up is I would like to talk about that tonight. It seems to me, and we've got Lawyer Joe in the room. I'd like to get her a mic as well. But it seems to me that parents have a legal right to determine health care for their children. And I don't know where we've gotten awry on that, or where we got sideways, where the state thinks that they can come in and tell us what's best for our children. My personal stance on it is that there's no other person in this world outside my child's mother and myself that have the best interests of our child in mind. We have more to gain by my children's success and more to lose by my children's failures. So I don't see where the state has a play or a piece on the board there. And I do understand when it comes to child abuse and neglect that I do think the state should step in. If nobody is going to be an advocate for the child, someone should be. But I don't believe it's on medical care or essentially cosmetic surgery is when we talk about on the trans or reaffirming. But I'd like to go through the first half hour, 40 minutes of kind of just interviewing you and kind of picking your brain on some of the things that you found out in your research and some of the stuff that you've been able to accomplish with your advocacy. But let's go back to the mask mandate. Were you successful on pushing that back in your community?
So what they ended up doing was it was the week before February vacation. So they were going to reconvene the week after we got back. So what they did was they extended it that last week and through their next meeting. So I'm like, all right, Alex, just bite your tongue. Like, it's a win because they didn't, really extend it completely. I show up to that following meeting. We went from, like I said, 100, 200 people there and on Zoom to me sitting in the TV studio, and there's like 2 people on Zoom. I'm sorry. Where did the fight go? Where did the passion to save your children and stand up for it go? And I got up again. I told them how I completed my checklist of 10 things I was going to do. I had the paperwork to give them written notice. I was going to give verbal notice as well for their surety bonds. And they thought I left the studio because I had every intention to. They moved the vote up on the agenda. Well, I get a call. They're like, turn back around. I'm like, go back in there. They voted to end the mask mandate, but they were going to submit forth the policy verbiage that would have gotten rejected by DESE. That was the loophole they were trying to use. So if it got rejected, the current mandate stays in place. Well, I also have a background in writing bylaws, policies, and procedures. So I may or may not have been squirming in that seat there. And this is like the first time I've ever heard of this. The chair goes, "Can you keep it under 5 minutes, Alex?" I was like, "Oh, I just wanted to correct you. I didn't know I had 5 minutes." And I went back on the mic and I called out the verbiage. And I go, "Here's, exactly what will pass and be approved. Thank you." And 2 days after that, we did not need to wear masks anymore. And I don't want to say like it was me. There were other parents who showed up at that first one, and really, they hit the emotional aspect of it. They brought pictures of their kids. They talked about personal stories, where I came at them at that legal angle, at that very practical angle of like, hey, you really can't do this. A school board doesn't have as much authority and power as we, the parents, give them. So yeah, we were successful in it, and they at the same time dropped the testing. You know, you could do test and stay. They were going to continue that for the teachers and the staff. And as soon as I got wind of that, you know, knock on the union door. And I'm like, hey, the next thing you know, that was done too. So I'll take it as a win because a lot of school districts in Massachusetts did extend it through the rest of the school year. So we were lucky.
That sounds like a win. And doing a little research on this topic, it seems like that's a very popular strategy with school boards, is to table something and put off the vote, and hopefully the fervor for or the dissent for whatever they're going after will simmer down, and people go on about their lives and forget about it, and they'll pass it in the darkness of the night. I think that not just school boards are doing that. I think there's a lot of that kind of play going on throughout state legislatures and even the Congress. We'll put up a big fight about it today, and then we'll come in at midnight some other day and pass it along and say we put up the good fight. But let's move from the mask mandates to have you had a chance to this lady in Kentucky? I think I sent that to you, the TikTok and the X post on her speaking about her children receiving teeth cleanings and then subsequently getting a laundry list of some pretty serious dental work that needed to be done. Have you had a chance to look at any of that and have an opinion on that?
Oh, I have an opinion. All right. I mean, it is sad because more and more parents fall for that. They sign these consent forms and they don't realize that it opens the door for things like this. And it is intentional. It is targeted specifically for families that have, like state health insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, because they know that they're going to get the money. And it's another loophole for them. If a parent then revokes consent, they can open it, go to DCF, a CPS, and try to, get the parent to catch a case with them. And that's the premise and basis of it. And it is absolutely disgusting. We got sent home at the beginning of the school year. They wanted to do a BMI, body mass index, for my first grader. And I laughed my butt off. And, I filled it out and I was like, I do not comply. Like, you do not have my consent, all of it. And I sent it back in and I got a call from the school. Alex, but I'm like, no, you have my children's medical records. Your job is to educate our children. Your job is not to parent them. You are not doctors. You are not psychiatrists. You are not trained in these things. You are supposedly, quote unquote, trained in education. You're educated in how to educate others. So she was absolutely one of at least 1,000 stories I've heard with that. And it's sad. And they can use your student handbook as another way around that. So when she signed that consent form, most likely she signed the student handbook, which like doubled down on her consent to allow the school districts to do basically whatever they chose to step in as that parental role and make decisions on behalf of our children. So I always advise parents, do not sign it. There's nothing they can do to you. Don't sign it.
Let me ask you this: where do you think this comes from? I've got 3 daughters. 2 are older and adult, and I've got 1 that's in high school now. I didn't have any issues with my older daughters. My youngest daughter has dyslexia, just like I do. In fact, she's a spitting image of me, and our minds work the same. It's kind of scary. But when she was first grade, second grade-ish, they tested her, and I wasn't surprised to find out that she was dyslexic. We go in for a meeting, and in this meeting, they're talking about we'll read to your child, and she won't have to read for tests and things like that. And I'm against it. I grew up in a time where I was diagnosed with dyslexia in high school, but I'd had it my whole life. And pretty much it was just prescribed to read, and it's going to be a little harder, but work through it and you'll figure out your way to sort it through. And I have. It hasn't held me back. It hasn't been a crutch. I don't tell people I'm dyslexic. I don't ask for special provisions on tests or testing and things like that. And the professions that I've been in my life, I wouldn't have been afforded that in the first place. If you couldn't pass the test, then you're not going to get the license to be the professional in the aspects that I was. But I got quite a bit of pushback from a teacher that was in there about, particularly on. She was saying that they'll force her to be read test, and I said if she wants to, that's fine. But if she feels like she can do it without it, then I want to encourage her to push through it. And I made the comment that in the real world, they're not going to make provisions for that. And I look at all of us as adults, it's a competitive world out there that your ability to compete is going to determine the amount of income that you make and how your quality of life. The more you're competitive, I believe you do better. It's a competitive world. She pushed back on me and she said, Mr. Joe, this is the real world. And I snapped back pretty much before I had a chance to think about what I was going to say, because I have that tendency sometimes. And I said, no, this is school. This is not the real world. You just don't live in the real world. And we had some issues with that going on, but I'm glad to say that my daughter is a straight A student. She's honor roll. She's in a STEM school for science. Computer science is what she enjoys. But she, after the first year, she never accepted the reading the test for them and getting the extra time that she's afforded because of her diagnosis. So she did exactly what I thought she would do. Is she figure out that she's got some slow points here and there, and she'll figure out a way around them because she's intelligent enough to do so. But I say all that to say, or to ask, well, when did this start? When did this start to happen? Was this a slow creep onto parental rights, or is this something that's just come about in the last 5 to 6 years? Or do you know?
This was definitely a slow creep. And it really, when you got the No Child Left Behind, every student succeeds act, that is when it went into high gear and they really were able to decide what was right for our kids because of money. That's when you had BlackRock now, Vanguard. They are some of the biggest backers of your public education system. The NGOs that are involved in this, the puppet strings that are pulled from the top to our state officials and federal officials to create these policies and stuff. So each one of our kids, they're a dollar sign. You think your child is the world and they're the most special thing. The school districts don't. The public education system is a business. And I do what's called like a 101 A Parent's Guide series. And then the first one, Woke 101, that's the first slide. What is public education? And how is this hierarchy and structure done? And it is. There are stakeholders. There are union reps. There are things that really control this. So my children, my oldest son, Mac, he's 8. He has autism. He is like the cash cow gold mine. If you have a child with autism, if you have a child with dyslexia, is the second most money that they will give towards a child. Each kid's worth X amount base pay, right? I put the link down in the pill where you can find your state and see how much your kid's worth. You take that base pay, and for every service offered on your child's IEP or 504, which is their ed plan and accommodation plan, there is additional funding put on top of your kid. My middle kid has articulation, so he gets speech. And my youngest son, forget it, he's just a hot mess. That kid gets everything. If I pull my kids out of my school district, I am pulling out over $100,000. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is in the grand scheme of things with this. So they want to have our children diagnosed with stuff. They attempt to diagnose your children. You had mentioned how she'd had the testing. When your children go and have these assessments done, for all different areas you can check off where they could potentially need additional services. They want to find something so they can have your kid, so they can then decide what is best for them because they actually get more money. Does your child actually receive those services? A lot of times, no. Does your child actually receive those services at the quality that they need or what meets their IEP? Whether it's 1 day, 2 days, 30 minutes, a group, a single, do they? Most likely not. And most parents are unaware of this and they sign on that dotted line. Now, I had mentioned the health insurance stuff. Again, tied into this, healthcare and education go hand in hand. They are in each other's pockets big time. If you have a kid on an IEP and you are on Medicaid, Medicare, and the state health plans, you will now get consent forms allowing the school district to bill health insurance for reimbursement for those services on top of the money the district's already getting to provide the services for your child. It is nothing but a money-making turnaround. Who's profiting? How can we meet these larger agendas, not just in our country, but we're seeing across the world? How can we get there faster? And you need that money. And it's absolutely disgusting. But it was Obama who really, when he signed that, I believe it was 2000, I want to say 12, no, 11, 10, when that kind of went into place. I think No Child Left Behind is one of the worst things to hit our public education system because they just move your kid along, even those with a disability. So it's very disheartening. And yeah, now it's in full force. And to be able to get a hold of this train and stop it dead in its tracks, it's going to take something really big from us. Going up against the government and these policies and taking out the business part of education and making it what it really should be. That's my long short of what I think about that and from my research, what I kind of know. And I will provide a bunch of different mapping, probably from a lot of topics that we may discuss today. So you can kind of see the visual of the NGOs and who are pulling these puppet strings and in which areas within the school systems and your Department of Education that's coming from.
Yeah, it does seem like we're moving towards a 1984-ish, where the state raises your children and they're just in your care at night, and for you to provide money to feed them, and I guess insurance as well. But I want to go to FT. FT, you have a question for Advocate or Alex?
Yeah, I just more less of a question, but just when you were talking about your dyslexia and your daughter's dyslexia, I'm also dyslexic and I'm also a computer programmer. And kind of like you, where I kind of figured it out. I did actually have an IEP, and I'm in Massachusetts, by the way. Um, and I used an Alpha Smart to help me. And at a certain point, I didn't take the after high school, I didn't take any of my extra disabilities, and I graduated in August with my bachelor's in computer engineering, and I'm working on my master's in a field where I basically have to stare at text all the time. I did want to plug Open Dyslexic because that font has changed my life. That font single-handedly cures dyslexia. It's actually insane. The first time I saw it and I tried to read it out loud, I cried because my whole life, it's something where I really could not do at the level in which I should have been able to do it at. However, to realize that, hey, there's nothing I could have done to fix it, that was really impactful. And I just wanted to say, for dyslexia, your brain, you have to kind of develop a decoding mechanism in your head, and that for some people comes in different stages. I think when it comes to these IEPs and stuff like that, like I definitely hear what you're saying, but I also see some of the potential benefits in being able to help people, because you know what I there's some tests that I had that I could have done better if I actually kept my extra time, that I could have performed at a level that's more in line with my peers, if I didn't have to decode uh, the words before I read them. You know, so
Let me
I
ask
do
you
think.
this on your
Mhm.
dyslexia. Like myself and my daughter, we have a dyslexia that is doesn't we don't have problems with reading, and I kind of equate that with if you're reading something that it either makes sense or it doesn't. But when it comes to numbers, a 12 makes sense. Could make sense as a 12, but it also could make sense as a 21. It seems to be with numbers for us as far as keeping them in line. Did you find something that helps you with that?
The dyslexic fonts also has like number support, so I would definitely check that out. My dyslexia is numbers and words and letters. There's actually 6 types. I think I have like the majority of them. There's a type that has like multiple of them. So I'm number dyslexic. I'm also like word dyslexic. The font definitely helps. Basically, what it does is it has different texturing, and different anchor points on the script, which allows your brain to actually find and recognize and decode those symbols faster. Also, fun fact: I'm not dyslexic in Mandarin. It's really just the Latin script that just sucks. And
Of course you're not. Of course you're not dyslexic in Mandarin. Who is?
No, but the reason why I say that is because I went to a school, Josiah Quincy School in Boston, and they have a really big Mandarin Chinese like uh, group that goes there. So they actually offered Mandarin, and one of the things that I hated about being on my IEP is I didn't get to take another language because I was stuck in English language learning classes, even though English wasn't the issue. And I think that is one of the issues with the IEP is like they kind of like they overdo it in that way. Like I was sitting in classes where I already knew information just because of my disability, but I somehow was able to take Mandarin, and within a couple months, my Mandarin, both written and spoken, was better than my English, both written and spoken, which really showed that my brain was trying its best to decode words and stuff like that. And when it was given an opportunity in good faith, it was able to really thrive. But it was just the Latin syntax, that the characters that really messed me up. So I just wanted to share that because of what you were saying, and also give some perspective on the IEPs and stuff like that. Where I agree they can definitely go overboard and stuff like that, but at the same time they can be good, because at least from my backgrounds, like the how I learned how to read was my grandfather like literally forcing me to read, and I just had to figure out how to decode it myself, and that was a really horrible experience that really turned me off from reading. And I think having like certain parents won't know how to deal with these issues, and just like brute forcing it is not necessarily the best thing, and it can really impact your child negatively as well.
I agree with that. I've got excellent reading comprehension, and I attribute to working through dyslexia as having that excellent reading comprehension, and my daughter does as well. She does well in all forms of studies. I would say that she's got her dyslexia mastered. But advocate, let me go to veteran and see if veteran's got a question for you. Then we'll come to you. Go ahead, veteran.
Well, also, like FT, I want to appreciate what you put in the pill. I'm definitely going to take advantage of that because I'll get into that part later. But just what Alex was saying, I'm in Kentucky, the same state as that TikTok that you shared, which I saw, and I'm so behind that lady because I received the same letters about examinations for my kids, and I denied them all. Also, I denied picture taking. They send you letters saying, hey, or is it okay? Do you consent to taking pictures of your kids so we can put it on our site, or, on the school site? And I deny that as well. Also, there's an app called Parent Portal that we use that shows your kids' grades and everything. And on there, both my kids have a yellow triangle with an exclamation point that shows vaccine denying, which is a hell of a label to have on your kid in that app. So I guess everybody in the school board sees that, and it's because they didn't get the COVID vaccine. So it shows that it actually says vaccine denier on it, and that's not a awesome feeling. It just it's like you have a big red light on you. But to go to dyslexia, I know this is not the topic at hand, but we're doing the best with my brother. He had it. He grew up fine. We helped him with that. Actually went into the military, became a sniper, flies helicopters now in Hawaii. Seems to be doing just fine. And then my daughter shows signs of it. D's and B's are a little bit backwards, 9s and 6s, things like that. And back to French, I appreciate you putting that in the pill, my brother. I will definitely look at that so we can, help my daughter out. But they haven't picked it up because I picked it up before they did at the school. I mean, because of my brother. But I'm totally behind what Alex is saying. Like, it feels like the schools are trying to find some kind of permission, whatever it might be. And then once they have that permission, they'll go as far as they can to, they're not your kids. I wish I could homeschool my children. But me and my wife, we have our busy lives and we just don't have the time for that. Unfortunately, I wish we did. But I agree with what she's going with, everything that she's saying. And yeah, again, thanks, French. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. And I just wanted to mention that dyslexia is it's a language processing disorder, not anything visual. So like it's not like you don't need glasses. It's not anything with your sight. It's a cognition thing. And I don't want to take up too much time, but I did also want to mention, I used to work at Apple, and I was able to get a worldwide change done that benefited everybody because of my dyslexia. Because they have you type on these iPads to take these appointments, but of course the software keyboard, those letters are going to be shifting around in my head. So I've always had a hard time keeping up. They wanted me to, say one thing while typing another, and I just couldn't do that. Eventually, I was able to demand that I got an accommodation for that and got an iPad with a physical keyboard. And that change reverberated around the entire world in Apple's ecosystem. Now, any Apple employee can request and actually get iPads for various different disabilities, whether it be smaller iPads or bigger iPads with keyboards. And I say this to say that sometimes, when we do accommodate people for different things, and even at risk to going against the parents' interest, we can make the world a better place and make people more accessible. Like, 'cause things that are accessible for one group in particular can affect multiple other groups in ways that are beneficial.
I don't know that there's many people against helping children with disabilities. Interesting you say about you can get a smaller iPad. Is that for folks with smaller hands, I would assume? But I'm not opposed to that. I think that parents need to be involved. It seems like there's a unilateral trend moving to whereas the school or some
Joe Lanou, live on X.
Educator is going to step in and be the advocate for my child when I'm the advocate for my child, and I'll die on that hill. But let's go back to advocate.
All right, y'all are killing me here. Now I got the notebooks out. So I'm going to just comment what Veteran was saying super quick. I dropped my website down in the pill too, where it has like a bunch of stuff and resources that people can use. Everything I provide is free. I am a special education advocate. I do it for free because I never want a family to not reach out for help because of a cost. I know what that's like being a single mom, so I would never do it to anybody else. One of the things that's on there is a beginning of the school year checklist, and it talks about the handbook. You sign that, you have no idea what you just did. I'm telling you, it will keep you up at night if you really knew what was in there and what you would allow them to do. Some school districts, they can just take your kid off property in an unmarked car. Like, it doesn't have to be a District 1. You don't need to know about it. In some states, I believe Washington's one of them, gender affirming care, not just socially transitioning our kids, but can provide puberty blockers, all kinds of things, field trip forms. You need to make sure you look at. You have to cross out certain areas because school districts want to waive themselves of all liability. So you got to look at those. I provide opt-out template for gender ideology, sex ed, critical race theory, social emotional learning, and all data mining and collecting, surveys, testing, and assessments. Right? That was a lot right there in one sentence. I also have a religious vaccine exemption template you can use. You need to have, and then a FOIA template, so the public records request, to be able to request your kid's curriculum right from the jump, because yeah, you have to do that. They don't just give it to you, and they'll give you a hard time when you ask. Your query, you need to have a query done. Even if you have no intention on volunteering at the school or chaperoning a field trip, have that done already though. Have that on file. And then really, as dorky as it sounds, I don't even care. Go to the darn PTO meetings. I don't want to be there either. I don't want to look at some of these mothers and no, but you gotta be actively involved, and you have to hear things firsthand yourself. You need to look into, you got your school board, but every individual school and your community has what's called a school council. They actually hold more power than a school board. People don't realize it. You work with your principal and some of the staff creating the strategic plan for your school, the budget proposal for the following year, different things like that. If you have a child with special ed, there's actually something called SPEC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Then there's PAC, Parent Advisory Council. Those three councils report to the state, your state Department of Ed. They answer to them. So it's actually a really, really good way to find out what's going on, even up at your state level. So yeah, like that checklist, it's all up there, and I give you what you need to do. Like, print it off, sign it. Anything you give your school district, you need to send certified mail return receipt and do everything in triplicate. I'm not trying to fearmonger you, but if that's what it's going to take to, make sure you do it that way, then I will instill fear. I'm just kidding, but it's true. You want to make sure that there is a paper trail. So heaven forbid you need to, seek legal action at some point. You have every single thing in a row. School districts don't like this. They actually have no legal right to kick back on a lot of these things. They try to, states try to, but there are laws in place that protect us from doing so. And with the IEP, all I want to say with that is it is an opening offer for an IEP and a 504. You don't need to accept it. You can reject the whole thing. You can reject parts of it. You can call a team meeting whenever you want. If your child you feel needs additional support, or you think that we can cut back on some support, and you have the right to bring any and everybody to a team meeting, to that IEP meeting, to advocate and be there for your child. You hold the power, not the school district. They are going to intimidate you. And like I said before, it's because of the money. Your kid brings them more money. And that is just sad. When you really take a step back and process this, the fact that they prey on children that have some kind of superpower, that's what we call it at our house, is the most evil thing you can really think of, because they are also the children that are targeted more for this gender ideology than any other population of students, specifically boys with autism. It's all a money-making scheme, and they really don't give your kid what they need. But I see you got a bunch of hands now.
Thank you. I enjoy hearing what you've got to say. Some of the stuff I wasn't aware of myself. But let's go to Robbie. Welcome, brother Robbie.
Hey, brother Joe. Good to be back. How's all my Night Court family doing? Awesome to advocate. You speaking my language. I'm a 10-year veteran as an educator, former educator. 2 years I spent in the public school system in Texas, and I taught 5th grade science and social studies. And you are absolutely 100% correct. It's one of the reasons why once I really, parents need to understand, if you are sending your kids to a public school or even a private school setting, you have to think in terms that you're sending your kid to a work release program. It's like prison, okay? Because you got to check your kid in. You got to get permission to get your kid out, right? You gotta, it's like going to visit an inmate, right? You gotta go through all the checks and stuff like that. It's the same thing when you go to school. They use the same lunch trays. They use the same, they get the food that they give to the prisoners. It's the same companies that they give to the kids in the school. They can inoculate your kid without you knowing about it in certain school districts and certain states. It's one of the main reasons why me and my wife decided to, you know what, it's time to homeschool here on out. And it's not only just because of that, it's also because of what they allow, right? You know, kids, one of the problems I had was the fact that they expected me to handle special need children in my classroom with the general population kids. I could not serve both kids. I was not equipped to serve special needs kids, and they didn't give a shit about it. They just sat these kids in the classroom, and each kid had their own special needs, and then they expect you to teach them as well as the other kids. And as you can imagine, it was chaotic because you spending time over here with this kid while these other kids get neglected and vice versa. So your rights as a parent, I'm going to say, is secondary. They don't see you as a parent because they see themselves as the parent because they spend the most time with your kid. You're only going to spend about 2 or 3 hours because most of the time, if you're a parent, you're working, right? 9, 10 hours. You're going to pretty much pick them up, maybe have dinner with them, ask them how their day went, and then it's probably off to bed. And then you're going to rinse, repeat, and recycle it all over again. They the ones that spend the most time with your kid. They the ones that's gonna know more about your kid, and that's why they're gonna determine that they have the right to determine what can happen to your kid and what they allow you to know. So just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Robbie. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Phil.
Are you with us, Phil?
Yeah, sorry, come back to me. I apologize. I'm just busy at work. I apologize. Go ahead, Alex. You got the floor.
All right. Well, Robbie, I want to say thank you because So I come from a family of educators. My parents were teachers. I have aunts, uncles, superintendents, like you name it. My sister was a sped teacher. I was a teacher. I taught in colleges, first year experience programs. And there are bad apples everywhere. And the bad apples are the ones that make the good educators like yourself get a bad rap. And we get lumped in together and we forget that there are individuals in these schools trying to protect our kids from the inside out. And I know that personally, just from my own school district. And they are the unsung heroes, and we do forget it. And as parents, we are so overwhelmed and so frustrated and so pissed off that sometimes you do take it out on the teacher or the specialist or the para that isn't a part of this, that truly is doing things behind the scenes to make it easier for our kids. So I just wanted to thank you because it's not easy sitting in that classroom and the crap hole that you have to deal with. And then like with the special ed part, that is something really, really common. They'll say that your child can be integrated into Gen Pop. And again, that's a part of the money making maneuvering around scheme. Because if your kid can be put in a general classroom, quote unquote, and it's not on their IEP, they're getting this extra funding, but they don't have to provide your kid services because they're sitting in a class, which again is actually legal. But did you say you taught in Texas? Did I hear that right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Are you aware of what Chapter 25 is?
Sounds familiar, but it's been a minute, so I definitely
The
forgot.
enrollment and admissions law, Chapter 25, general Texas law, that allows an adult ages 21 to 26 to be enrolled in the Texas public schools.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yep.
I pulled those numbers of how many, invaders are sitting in the Texas public schools with your children that parents don't know about because they are not informed. They are not notified because they don't have to be, because we're in charge. They strip us of our rights, but signing these documents almost a lot like we are giving them consent to take our kids. And parents are bullied. And God, can you imagine the things I've been called? Like, forget it. They see me coming, like, God damn, here she is again. Domestic terrorists, all of it. Oh no, the connection. I've been called everything. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But parents are scared to speak up and speak out, especially in blue states. Add a parent with a child with a disability, they're silent because they don't want to take it out on their kid. That is the tactics they use. And I had mentioned the data mining and collecting. That is actually the most dangerous component of our public schools today. Because that is how you get knock, 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 DCF at your door. How you go to pick up your kid from school and they'll say, sorry, Ms. McCarowitz, we cannot release your children to you. Excuse me, what? I'm telling you, the day if that ever happens, they better have like the entire police department there ready for me, because that is illegal. They can't do that. DCF shows up to you unless they have a signed warrant by a judge. You don't have to let them in. Your children don't need to go with them. But they use these surveys and these testings to build profiles on us as parents. The day your kid starts in school, so say even preschool, 3 years old, your kid's going to get an email address. That's their student ID number. I don't care what it says at the end. If it doesn't say Google or whatnot, they are Gmail accounts and they are Microsoft accounts. So they're going into this larger national database, right? Your child has a profile on them. Then we have an additional profile on us. And they are able to use all these different, programming softwares and stuff that you, the taxpayer, funds, right, at the state level to move the pieces around to see which children are easily targeted and to which way to direct them. Which parents, based off of the way your children answers certain surveys or whatnot, or all of a sudden they're with like the adjustment counselor without your knowledge or your consent, right? And kids are innocent and they want to please the adult sitting in front of them. And now your profile grows bigger and bigger till they have that just enough they need, or your kid says the right phrase. And now you are in for the biggest fight of your life. And it is disgusting, but it is happening hand over foot. And I think that's a big reason why we're seeing parents even less engaged with their children's education. We're all busy, yeah, but we brought these kids into this world. They are our responsibility to raise. You cannot push it off on a tablet, on a coach, a school system. Because, Robbie, you said it right. Your child spends more time with the schools than they do with you. And that's not a judgment on our parenting. It's a judgment on we have to have two-parent households with income. So both parents have to work. So now your kids in after-school programs. It is done intentionally to break down this nuclear family. So it is easier to strip you of your parental rights. And it starts at the base level of your district with these policies, which it's like a mandate. It's a strong suggestion. Like forget it. You can fight those back and call to question whenever you want. Then they go to your Department of Ed level. Then they go to your state house. And it's this climbing chain up that people just are so overwhelmed by it, because you don't need to be a parent to stand up against this. You pay taxes. You have a say. They cannot deny you anything because you're funding it. And they hide things in policies and in bills that you don't realize. And it is absolutely terrifying. DCF, I don't provide my boys with gender affirming care. I can get hit with child abuse charges in the state of Massachusetts. They're about to pass that. Get out of here. That's not child abuse. That's called parenting. And the poor children who are actually being abused, they're still living in that. They're not like, they push them to the wayside. It's so messed up. And like I said, Joe, it's all about the money and the control of this entire thing. I see we got more hands. I don't look at my phone a lot, so you guys gotta like cut me off if there's a ton of hands, because I just talk and read my stuff.
Well, Advocate, you're a guest speaker and somewhat more of an expert on this subject than anyone else, so we're going to give you some latitude on that. But let's get some hands. Let's go to John.
Hey, Advocate. So thank you. So I've been listening, and you brought up something. So my stepdaughter in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade had always been an AB student. So Christmas of 2018, obviously they were on Christmas break. Stepson and his best friend was murdered, and all this happened during Christmas break. So when it was time to go back to school, I went over and talked to my stepdaughter's teachers. I mean, they already knew because they attended the funeral service, but because of she had suffered some PTSD because this happened at midnight when we got the phone call. So my wife had slammed her door open, screaming at her to hurry up, get dressed, and I don't know what all she said. It's all a blur to me now because we had to go to the hospital. But she suffered from PTSD because of that. So when she goes back to school, the teachers are aware of what happened and the circumstances. But later on in the year, the school year, I think it was actually after spring break, I got notified that they wanted to have a meeting because Brenna was showing some signs that something may be going on. And I was like, well, duh. So anyway, I went to the school and was talking to the teachers, the guidance counselor, and whatnot. Well, they were basically trying to label or put on her that maybe this had triggered something, and on the scale of some kind of like on the autism scale, like she was having issues concentrating. She was having issues talking, reading books, understanding math. And it was also at that time that they started transitioning from regular math, as everyone on here knows it, to Common Core math. Well, going back to Brenna being an AB student, she couldn't understand that. Um, I didn't understand it as a stepdad trying to help her do her homework and whatnot. But going back to what you said about bullying, they kept on me and on my wife, because obviously she was the yay or nay person, but I was pretty much the liaison. But it was like they were bullying us to get, number one, get her tested, which we knew what the issues were. She was suffering from PTSD and also losing her brother. Um, so it was like, what do we do? So we go to the school administrator and we're like, I mean, we lay everything on the table. And, they pull our records and they say, well, our public educators are the professionals. Well, I get that. I'm not a teacher. But as a parent and a step parent, we knew what the issues were. But they were almost like, and we found this out about a month after the fact, but they were like putting her during the middle of the day after lunch. They were putting her in classrooms for children or that had children in there that had learning disabilities. And I flipped my fucking shit. I mean, because it was almost like they labeled her and went ahead and went against our wishes and done what they wanted to do. So it was at that end of the school year that we ended up splitting up because of everything that had happened. So she moved to a different county anyway, but she still suffers from all of that. And even in the new county school system, they are they're still wanting to put her or test her because she still suffers from PTSD. I mean, that really did a number on her. So what recourse? I mean, I mean, we're divorced now, but we still talk. What recourse does we have?
It would depend, like, so legally they cannot put your child in special education without your consent. They cannot provide your child with any form of an accommodation. And that can range from anything from OT, PT, counseling, being pulled out if they're a 0.4, which is like for reading and math extra, like assistance. They can't even put your kid in the lunch bunch without your consent. So that, hearing that they put her after lunch and whatnot in a class that was a designated class in that district, in that school, for individuals with disabilities, right there violates your parental rights. There is no legal documentation. An IEP and a 504 is a legally binding contract. And I'm not even like exaggerating, like that's what it is. That if you don't have one of those, you've not signed on the dotted line, they legally can't give your child these things and just decide what's good for them. What I would always recommend to them would be, you need to, address it in the school board in writing, get their reasoning for doing it, and then seek legal action. Tell them you have violated by rights. You have violated, under the Students with Disability Act, and there is a parent 101, a parent's guide series specifically on parental rights, that I have all the different areas of things that cover us, but they are not allowed to do that without your knowledge or consent. Now, there are scenarios where your daughter suffered a traumatic thing over vacation. When she came back, you and your ex-wife could have verbally given consent for her to be able to have, if she needed to take a break and go to the nurse's office, the guidance office, or if you trusted the adjustment counselor, be able to allow her to see her or him, if it's a boy or girl, whatever, without having to have a formal diagnosis. A lot of school districts will do that in moments, like that. My kids and I are domestic violence survivors. When they took my ex-husband, they didn't have, counseling on their IEPs, but I was able to work with the school district and my kids could be able to have check-ins and stuff. So there are ways that you can do it correctly. But what I would recommend to parents is to seek that legal action. Call them to question and say, you had absolutely no right. You violated my child's constitutional rights and you violated my constitutional rights by doing that. A lot of times, school districts will back that train up real quick. Nobody wants to be sued. Nobody wants to be on the news. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's our children that become the example. It's us that have to set the precedent so it doesn't happen to another kid. And that's one thing that really stinks. And I see it every day. So I would, but she's not in that school district anymore, right?
No, and this happened 6 years ago. So yeah, I mean but she's telling me now that they're still wanting to test her.
Then you do not sign the consent forms for it. Tell them no. And what I would do is I would go and get an outside neuropsych done. And that
Okay.
is for any parent. If you think that your child needs something or there's just, my kids were nonverbal. I knew as a mom, like, no, my kid should be talking. And it's like, oh, boys develop slower. Nah, no, in your gut. Have that neuropsych done because it's going to give you this broad picture of your child. That cannot be disputed with a school district. They can still do their quote unquote assessments and testing from what they're seeing of your kid inside. But that actual diagnoses, those codes or lack of diagnoses that the district wants to label your kids with is imperative when you're starting off in this IEP process in this special ed world, because they're going to tell you one thing, and I guarantee you it breaks most of the laws pertaining to special education. So I would honestly have that neuropsych and I would not sign a single consent form for testing and assessment until that is in.
So
And that's to cover your child and you and the school district. It's really a smart move.
So she's been seeing a therapist, and the therapist obviously has documented all that. Would that suffice, or is this something total like your suggestion? Something totally different needs to be done.
If the therapist you're seeing is able to diagnose and they're able to say, all right, PTSD with dissociation, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever it may be, and it is a formal one that can be used with the school district. They're still going to want to give a little pushback. I would recommend just saying to them, well, we'll do the parent survey, where we're going to fill out how we see our kid in certain scenarios. A teacher can fill that out on how they're in there, but they're not really doing a one-on-one with your child. And like I said, at any time you can take that consent back. You can stop them from whatever service if you see something getting worse. But no school district should be pushing anything on a parent.
Yeah, I did read because when I knew this was coming up, I did read. I'm in North Carolina, so I did read that, and they actually. I'm not saying it wasn't there before, but they actually just passed that bill. It was Senate Bill 49 back in August of 23, and they had until January. I mean, that's when school started, but they had until January 1, 24 to have everything in place. And I did read that you can withdraw at any time. So I did know that, but that you told me what I need to know. Thank you.
Well, I think, John, it's a lot like law enforcement. There's things that the government can do with consent because we agree to it, and there's things that the government can't do without our consent. We probably, as parents, need to be aware of that. Folks, we're up at the top of the hour. We're not going to have a weather report tonight. Coco is under the weather. Lost her voice. So we're going to skip over that part. If could get everyone to post the space, see if we can't generate a few more listeners in here for us. And I'm going to go to Help Me, Rhonda. And then we're going to switch gears. I'm going to introduce another guest to you. But go ahead, help me, Rhonda. And I see you, veteran. We'll get you in there.
Hey guys, sorry, I don't want to take up too much time, but hey Alex, great. I want to just piggyback on Alex, veteran, for sure. But I don't want to be redundant. I haven't been on Twitter Spaces for a while because I'm a Moms for Liberty chapter chair here in my county. So I am boots on the ground fighting for all of our kids, and it's a freaking nightmare. But just going back to the whole reading and the dyslexia and all that, my son, who is 12, was diagnosed. He has an IEP with a learning disability, and I just want to point this out that 80% of kids that have a learning disability, whether it's in math, reading, whatever the case is, it's 80% of them are dyslexic, and the schools consider that like a swear word. It's a word from hell. They don't want to hear it, because then they're put on the spot and they have to deal with it. So my child in second grade, I'll try to make this long story short. At the end of second grade, he was 2 years behind. I mean, let's be for real. And they just told me to read to him over the summer. His DRA was at a 4 and it was supposed to be at a 16. I have family in education, and my sister was a principal, and she's like, oh my God, no, reading to him over the summer. But anyway, we as parents need to be more involved. And I know we're all busy. I know there's single parents. I already raised a 33-year-old as a single parent, so I get that. But our kids weren't asked to be here. And Alex knows what I always say is we're not fixing our public school system. It's not being fixed. It needs to be done with. I mean, we're just not fixing it. It's just not possible. And I swore that I would live in a cardboard box before I would allow my kid to continue to be in an indoctrination camp. I won't do it. And so my husband and I had to make, renovations. We had to do, different things in our lives and to make that happen. So we did a public school, but we need to hit them where it counts, in the pocket. That's the only way they are going to see us is if we hit them in the pocket. And if we even with my son being in a charter school in Pennsylvania, because that's where we're at, it's a public charter. Because he has an IEP, they took $32,000 from the school district and put to CCA, the public charter. But you know what's nice about it is I'm home with him. If I hear something, if I see something that's not right, there's no surveys, there's none of that shit going on. I can say, no, stop. Like, this isn't going to happen, not on my watch. And the thing is with the whole reading thing and it's so more than just dyslexia. I mean, we have auditory processing. We have so many different things that the schools are not diving into. And English language is the hardest language to learn. And I forget what his name was saying about Mandarin earlier. And it's funny because, English language is the hardest language to learn. And yet our teachers aren't being taught how to teach our kids to read, because reading just doesn't come. It's phonetics, it's encoding and decoding. And these teachers aren't being taught. What my son needed and what most people need is Wilson, and Wilson instruction by a certified Wilson instructor that I made my school district, when he was in brick and mortar, pay for out of the pockets of the school district, come to our house and teach him. That's what got him to where he is today. And it was me being involved and me standing up and being his advocate. And it was a part-time job. Don't get me wrong, but we need to pull our kids out of these indoctrination camps. It's not changing. These schools aren't getting any better. And I could go on for days, but I'm fighting this on a daily basis. I'm at school board meetings. I'm speaking up. I'm reading from pornography books, and I'm being shut down because the kids can have these school books in their classrooms, in the libraries, but I can't freaking read it at a school board meeting with adults. So I'm just saying we need to step up. We, the people, need to step up. We, the parents, need to step up way more than we are stepping up and speak out. Stop bitching and moaning. Take your kids out of the schools. I don't care if you have to eat ramen noodles for the rest of your life. Our kids are counting on us. And I'll end there.
Thank you, Rhonda. Veteran, I want to go to you. Rhonda, could you give us some information about your organization? I got a feeling that we've probably got some listeners that might be interested in being involved in their area. But I want to go to Veteran real quick, and then I want to introduce our next guest.
Yeah, I just had a question for Alex. Like I mentioned before, on that app that's in the school, it highlights the fact that my kids aren't vaccinated. And I think I heard you say you have things that help with that. I didn't catch it all. But I was just curious on what do you think about that, and what could you do to help me? I just don't like the fact that it is literally a yellow triangle with the exclamation point highlighting that.
What's the system that it's under again?
It's an app that you can track your kids' grades and missing
Is
assignments.
it Power School?
It's called, well, here in Kentucky, it's called Parent Portal.
Okay. So with that, yes, I did mention religious vaccine exception template. I don't care if you are pray to the tree in your backyard. I don't care what you believe in. I don't. All right. You're gonna believe in something and you're gonna get these in. Because when things come down the pipeline and the list of vaccines for our kids are 17 pages long, you're going to want that paperwork in ahead of time before your state ixnays that. So yes, you did hear me right on that. I'd be interested to see which company, which really the country only really uses the same freaking people, just different names, to see if that's a software thing or a district profile, because there's different ones. Your districts have like the profiles on your kids that have all the information about them, and then the state has another database. But you should be able to. It violates like HIPAA rights. They cannot have information like that just flying out there for anybody to see. But again, that goes back to, do you sign the handbook? Did you just give them consent for that? Have you brought it to their attention that you want it off?
No, actually, we don't consent to anything. Anytime that stuff comes through, we don't consent to any of that.
Yeah, the Parent People Privacy Act, I can never say that. And FIRMA, the Family Education Act, that would cover it's the Privacy Act. Like, you have the right to your children's records to say what they can see, what they can't see, and your child has that right. They can't sell your kids' information to third parties. They can't do certain things, and I would bet dollars to bills on having that labeled like that would fall under violation of that Privacy Act, because not every person in that school district needs to know that, nor do they have a right to know that. My kids, they have the vax exemptions, and I know for us, and sometimes they like to mess with my things. I can't see anything like that on ours. So that's why I would just be interested to do a little bit more digging on that parent portal itself and see where it's coming from, and then what the state law or your Department of Education's policies are around that. But I would address it with them. I'd say, hey, I was in the portal, I was looking at their grades, and I see this triangle thing. Like, what the heck is it? I don't, that doesn't make sense. I don't think that should be up there. I'd like it taken down.
I
and see what
appreciate
their
that.
reaction is.
No, I appreciate that, and I will do that. I'll see if it's a district or a state thing. But no, I will look into it, and I will address it. I appreciate the information. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and shoot me a DM. Like, we're following each other. My DMs are open, people, so feel free to, whatever. You got something to ask me, or you got information, just send it in, and I'll see if I know anything, and see if there's I work with this group, and then I promise I'll be quiet. It's called the People's Operation Restoration, and we are the people too. And Operation Restoration, it's Ann Vandersteel and Maureen Steele, the Maricopa County people, and they've teamed up with the group of Massachusetts. We are the people too, Ron Bouchard, and they have offered to provide all of us across the country any affidavits or notices that we want to serve and get out there, that they would be 100% a phenomenal resource for instances like this. If you do need to, put something formal in and you're just not sure how to go about doing it, reach out to me, or you can head over to their website. I'll post all of that. Just click on the thing and they're going to give it to you. We're actually going to be rolling out notifications and affidavits throughout May Day, coming up the 30th to the 3rd, and we're going to serve elected officials and, departments throughout the country. But that would be a great resource for parents to be able to have, especially when it's coming to the schools, healthcare, and DCF of our kids, because unfortunately it's gotten to that point. And again, I don't want to be the one that sets the precedent. I don't want it to be my kids. But if that's what we got to do, then that's what I got to do. So yeah, let me know what it is, and we'll see, because that might be something that I can look into with them and have something drafted, that parents that are in that same situation or something similar about your kid's health, like the changing of their sex on their student records, would fall under that.
All right, thanks. I want to change gears a little bit. It's still parental rights and what one could consider government interference. But I want to bring up Chris. Chris is, I can't remember what state it is. I think it is actually Massachusetts as well, or New Hampshire. I think it's actually between the two states. But regardless, Chris had a child with a woman. They weren't married. The relationship didn't maintain. The mother of the child, and this child is an infant at the time. I don't recall the exact age, but I'll let Chris explain in detail. But I just want to give you an overview.
Hey, Chris,
That
what's up? I know Chris. Chris knows me.
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
It's a going. Oh, and I do have that DCF thing for you, by the way. Never mind. You go. Tell your story.
good deal. And but Chris, there was a custody issue, mother and the boyfriend. I think some abuse in there. Long story short, the child is removed from custody of the maternal mother and the boyfriend. Chris steps in to try to take custody of his daughter and has been fought tooth and nail all the way through. In fact, I believe he's actually, the state has terminated his parental rights, and he's got an ongoing criminal case against him because I think he put up a little fit with the judge and filed some paperwork that they didn't like. But that's a 4,000 foot overview of the story. Chris, welcome to Night Court with Joe Lanou and the Night Crew. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us about your story.
Yeah, well, I live in New Hampshire. The case is out of the reoccurring state in this space tonight, Massachusetts. I'm a business owner. I run CS Trucking. I'm an owner operator, and we deliver pool water. That's about it. I'm pretty much just a family man. I stay at home. I don't do too much. Work, take care of my family. That's pretty much it. But yeah, you're right on you had it pretty much right. Back in 2018, I had a baby with a girl that I wasn't with, and about a month after she was born, I got a call from a mutual friend. She told me that the baby had been taken by DCF. It was a domestic assault between her and her boyfriend. DCF, I guess she actually already had a DCF case with her original kid. So they came in, and I didn't know, but she had a whole long history with DCF and everything. So they came right in, took the kids. And right in the affidavit, it says that they tried to make all attempts to keep her with family and all this and that, but the parents were unwilling and unfit to take care. But it says right on there, my address was unknown and they hadn't spoken to me at all. So yeah, I went. I found out on a Friday, and I went first thing Monday morning. I went straight to the DCF office. Told them I was the child's father, that I wanted to take custody of her. So they were like, okay, well, we've got her in care, so you're gonna have to take a DNA test. So that process took, God, it was like almost 6 months it took them to get the results back. When I offered to pay for the thing, I could have had it back in a week. So they did start letting me to have visits every once a week. But that was literally all they ever did. They gave me a visit once a week until the pandemic started. And then once that happened, they went full bore. They started writing out full reports about me, saying that I was a drug dealer and this and that. And I had 6 DCF cases, and all they came up with just an egregious amount of just crap against me. That's just completely unprovable. Like, it's just blatant lies. But they had already had her in care for almost, it was 6 months till I got the DNA test, and then it was another 6 months before they even COVID happened. So it was like another year after that because they stopped all visits, they stopped everything, so they just used that time to just go against me. And yeah, basically I learned the law on the first day of the DCF trial. Well, what they call a trial, which is really just a sham court. I actually served the judge. I served the DCF supervisor, the DCF caseworker, the DCF lawyer, and what was it? The foster care representative. I served them all with a notice of violations of my rights, and I accused them of what was it? A criminal conspiracy to violate rights and deprivation of rights under the color of law. So yeah, they weren't too happy about that. So, and me being I'm a man, so, and I'm not nice to them at all. So I throughout the whole they basically just ignored that. They put a new judge in. So the whole time I'm sending the DCF worker, I'm sending her all the foster care, foster parents that are getting caught raping their kids. I'm sending her articles, I'm sending her everything. Well, they turned all that stuff around on me and said that I threatened her life. So now I'm sitting facing 2 counts of what do they call it? Intimidation of a witness, stalking charge. Let's see, what else was it? Illegal wiretapping, because I actually I had a visit one time. Once they dropped all the regulations and everything, I went in for one actual visit that we were there in person, and the DCF worker tried to set me up. And I had a feeling that it was coming, so I recorded the whole thing on my phone. And the next day after the visit, I got a call saying that that I was going back to court for a termination of visitations, and that the police officer and that was on duty at the place and her had filed that I went crazy and this and that. And I'm just sitting back laughing, going, yeah, well, I've got the whole thing recorded. So yeah, so now they had me arrested on April 1st of 22, and now we are here, what, 2 years later, or we're a little bit over 2 years later. I still just got my trial date, which they set for June 3rd. So that is what I am dealing with.
Well, let me ask you this. So they never really gave you a real consideration as taking custody of your child.
Well, they said they were, but they were literally just slow rolling it. They were just setting me up for the trial, for their DCF trial. So yeah, they never gave me any chance. I never had my child outside of the DCF office. I never nothing. And now I haven't even seen her for almost 4 years.
Did they challenge your standing? I mean, you're a guy that comes forward and says, "Hey, this is my daughter, and I want her out of foster care, and I want to take custody of her." Did they challenge your standing as a father? Did you do DNA test, or did I
I
miss
did
that?
take a DNA test. No, they never did anything. They just literally said, you are not allowed to be a father. We are taking your child. and they terminated my parental rights because I don't respect the court system. I'm violent and I threatened them multiple times, is what they said.
Okay. I want to go to Alex. Go ahead, Alex.
So both Chris and this other dad, Nathaniel in Massachusetts, they are being made an example. They are being used to shut other parents up and to make them hide. Nathaniel's story is identical to this. Same. Baby mama, him, not together. Child's with the mother F's up. It was days before that dad too found this out. UCF has put them through the ringer. They actually cleared Nathaniel's mom, I think, Chris, right? To, that house was fit for the child to go to. And the court said no. They have violated every single one of their constitutional rights. It has been ridiculous what they are doing here. And they're pulling out every single stop. Chris should not be hit with any of these charges.
No, they're all trumped up. They're completely false.
And June 3rd, we're going to talk later. We'll have Boston Broadside there. We'll freaking stream this shit. They're trying to set the precedent with this of you step out of line. We don't like what you say. We're going to back you into a corner. We're going to paint you like something you're not. We're going to make you go broke because these legal fees, people are losing their homes over this, their companies, because they can't afford to fight this system. And it is just disgusting. Massachusetts has one of the worst Department of Family and Child Services, as well as family and probate court in the country. They do things that you wouldn't even imagine. They're in your schools. They are doing things. They are vaccinating your child while they are in DCF custody.
But there's got to be some
parents.
state laws that allow that. I wouldn't say that our schools in Texas aren't intrusive, but I don't have that. We don't have that kind of intrusion from our CPS, which is the same as I think the agency you guys are talking about.
The state law, actually, it's Massachusetts General Law 119, Section 1, where it clearly states that the child must be put with family before going to the foster system.
Yep. And if they clear any family member, if DCF clears it, that is it.
Well, listen to this one.
Right.
My sister is a foster parent.
Yeah.
But here in New Hampshire.
Yep. And that won't count.
And they refuse to send her to New Hampshire because they want the money. We're getting back to the same thing with the school systems. It's all about the money.
Do you think it was more so that you were going to relocate that child to New Hampshire and they wanted the child to stay in the jurisdiction of Massachusetts?
I was actually sorry to cut you off. I was actually living in Massachusetts at the time. I didn't leave until 2020 because
I know in Texas the law is, and I know this from working in law enforcement. The law is that the judicial system and CPS are challenged by the law to return the child back to parents within a year. Family reunification is the win there. That's what they're striving to do, and judges work their butts off to do it. Somehow or another, it comes out on some sort of a scorecard for a judge when they let this go over. And well, it does trigger another thing. Then the judge has to bring in other judges, and they have to come back and look at that case, I think, every 30 days until the child is reunified or placed permanently with foster care or adopted. But they try to get it over with within a year.
See, what they did in my case is they used COVID to separate us completely. And then their whole thing was, oh, she's been with the foster family. That's her family. But it's like, you guys are violating my rights from day one. Like the moment that DNA test came back, they started violating my rights. And then under the color of law, and then, with all of them conspiring to do it, these are charges that these people can they can face the death penalty.
Let me ask you this. Chris, as a cop. this is just the police in me.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear color of law, but what does that mean? Give me some details or specifics on actions that they took
Anyone
that would.
acting under the color of law is a police officer, a social worker. It's anyone that works for the state that is using their power to deny you your rights. I have I can bring up the U.S. code for you. I've got it here.
No, I understand what the law is, but there's an element to the offense, and then there's the offense. I'm asking, what offense did they commit that you're claiming that's an infraction? They used the color of their
They
office. I
violated
believe
my
is what it
4th and
is.
14th Amendment rights. I mean, they've trafficked my child.
So
Essentially.
equal protection under the law, 14th, right?
Yep.
And the other is which one is the denying your custody of your child? It's the other one, right?
I'm not sure exactly what statute. I mean, the law is definitely not my forte. I mean, I'm a carpenter and a trucker, man. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but
no, I didn't mean to put it on your spot. And I'll be honest with you. I think when you say to folks that don't know you and they're just now hearing your story, and you say things like under the color of the law, they violated my rights. I think in their mind is going, well, which part of that was it? And I think you probably have a better idea. And I get where you're going with it. And by the way, that statute doesn't just come into play if you're denied your constitutional rights. If you're denied any facet of the law, that can be that way. That actually is a very broad term. There's a lot of things that can be done under the color of one's office or the color of one's authority, state authority.
Yep.
Let's go to FT. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris. Go ahead.
It's just been a crazy situation. It's just, I mean, you hear everybody talk about fathers that are just deadbeats, and then when you got one that fights for his kid, they're like, yeah, let's throw him in prison. It's
now, and your story honestly has a lot of facets to it. You've got a child custody, which is a civil issue. You've got that whole aspect of it, and then you've got now the criminal thing that's on top of it as well. So it's got a lot of angles on the story. So let's go to FT.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm also a Massachusetts resident, so it seems like we're dominating the space. But I can attest that DTF is really, really bad. They're basically worse than useless in this state. So I 100% like, it doesn't surprise me. What you're saying completely does not surprise me, and it's very sad. Because I always want to talk about deadbeat fathers, but when you actually have fathers that are stepping up, they would rather put them in jail. But yeah, I think I'm not sure if it will help you, but Massachusetts state constitution, although they don't listen to it, is actually pretty ironclad. So you might be able to find some articles there that can help your defense.
I think I stated 8 of them that they broke in my affidavit.
Isn't it crazy? Because Massachusetts was one of the states that held the ratification of the Constitution until certain things were added. Like, our Constitution is pretty ironclad, but they don't care. They don't give they don't give a fuck. They don't.
No, they don't.
Yo, Massachusetts goes back further than that.
Yeah.
Those were the ruffians that got this whole started in Boston. So don't forget about them.
Oh yeah,
folks were they
Our
were
Constitution is
ungovernable.
what our country's Constitution is modeled after.
Oh, yeah.
Which is ironic.
It's so sad.
Yeah. So what's going on up there with you guys?
Well,
more people don't feel like you, or
total
y'all forget
More
about
healing.
freedom's
That's
not
what's
good.
going on.
Well, okay.
More healing.
I can explain some of it. In the education system, they point out the inconsistencies of the application of the Constitution, which are 100% correct, but they use that to form the argument that then the Constitution is just defunct and we should abolish it because it was never listened to. Instead of drawing from that and say, hey, maybe if we should take it seriously, give it a shot, maybe we'll be good. So they ingrain this hatred for the Constitution in the students because they see how everybody didn't care for it. So why should I care for it? And that type of mentality breeds apathy to the Constitution, to both our state and federal constitutions, to the point where people don't care. And then it just becomes less and less in the public spotlight. But I actually wanted to kind of roll the conversation back a little bit and talk about divesting from public schools, because I think that might have the unintended side effect of completely devastating a specific population that has always had issues with education, specifically the Black community. A lot of people, especially even in Boston and Massachusetts, rely on public school system for their education. And if there's a mass exodus, if we're saying that, hey, we're not going to attempt to fix the system, we just need to completely abolish it, kind of like how they want to do with the Constitution, it's going to leave the black population very disenfranchised. And that's like my overall concern, especially considering that was in the push to do that literally started like once the board v education decision went down, and parents started pulling their kids from public schools going into private schools because they did not want to integrate. So I guess that's my only concern with that, because I completely understand the frustrations. And as somebody who's had an IEP, who's gone through that system, who's been placed in special ed classes for math, even though I'm very, very good at math just because of my IEP and stuff like that, I completely understand that. But I would be cautious, in myself, I'm weary of completely divesting from that system because of that.
Well, FT, I tell you what, let me pause you there. I want to bring that up in the last hour, some of the things that you're talking about. But we got our guest here, Chris, and I don't think we're done with asking him questions, and he's still got some of his story, I think, to get out. But let's go back to you, Chris. So when did they deny or when did they terminate your parental rights? And that's the state saying that you have no standing as far as this child's concerned in any manner.
That
Is
was
that right?
actually just a couple months ago. Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 months ago.
Do you have any legal process with this? Do you have an attorney that says there's an avenue that you can pursue, or is that
I appealed it. I put together a 74 or 79 page.
Night Court with Joe Lanou live on X.
Packet outlining everything that's gone on, and the judge basically just said that it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Even though at my appeal hearing, I asked him if he knew it was the statute. I was like, do you know this certain U.S. code is like 254? And he was like, no. What is that? And I'm like, yeah, well, it's your oath to office. He had no clue what it was. Yeah, I just trampled all over them, and they literally made me look like I'm crazy because I'm smarter than they are, and I'm not even that smart of a guy. It's I don't know. They just have they have no care for the law at all.
But I guess my question is that are you at the end of the road with your custody with your daughter? There is no other legal recourse, because it sounds like you're in state courts. Can you not take this to a federal court as an infringement on your 14?
Well, we're in. I do have some other things in the works. I've got a team that's working on it. I don't know if I really want to talk about it too much.
Don't. I was just going to tell you.
No, don't say anything
yeah.
that's going to compromise you. Remember, we're in an X space. Yep. This is just like you standing on the street screaming it through a megaphone, and except this is recorded and anybody can go back and listen to it. This is the public space.
Yeah, well, one part of it
don't say anything is compromising.
One part of it we can definitely tell, because I have met a man who is this guy's amazing. If you guys actually go onto my page, I have been switching. He's been blasting a whole bunch of videos on on TikTok. He was actually in the Supreme Court last week. By the grace of God, he somehow served the Attorney General in the DOJ the week before last. He got a date, and he was litigating where he is actually going after 32 different states for their unconstitutional courts. He just left tonight to start his 32 state tour, where he's going to be going to the state houses and doing press conferences, and putting all of the states on notice for the unconstitutional courts. So we've got guns about to be blazing. So I mean, we've got a little bit of hope in the works. But everybody should check out his name's Tanaway Downing, and I have a whole bunch of his videos posted onto my page, and he's actually
Night Court with Joe Lanou live on X.